Welcome to the Finance Commission meeting of Thursday, September 19th. We're located in the Robert M. Thornton Room in Town Hall. And we are live, which is exciting for us. So, we have a full agenda today. The main topic will be the special town meeting warrant, but we also have a lot of other items we want to discuss today. So let's get right to it. And let's start with approval of the minutes of July 15th.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous.
One abstain.
Abstain, okay. Good, all right. The next item on the agenda is reorganization of the Finance Commission for FY20, and let me turn it over to Molly Ahern.
Sure, are there any nominations?
Mr. Chair?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to nominate Ian Haley for chair. As most everybody knows, we try to circulate the chair, and so I nominate Ian this evening.
I will second the nomination.
Before you go any further, I would like to congratulate Alan for the wonderful job that he has done these past 2 years in shepherding the override campaign and the budget balancing committee. I think he's done a fantastic job, and we couldn't have done it without him. So thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you again. I've had a great board to work with that made my job easy. So, thank you.
Not sure we made it easy for you.
I'm trying to be diplomatic. Thank you. Thank you.
So we have a motion? We have a motion?
We have a motion?
We have a second?
He seconded.
We have a second?
So you,
Are there any other? Is it unanimous?
She did.
Yeah.
unanimous, thank you.
Unanimous.
Okay. And congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, let's
Uh-oh.
Move the chair.
move the chair.
I'll help you out.
Thank you. Here, swap here.
Swap water bottles too.
This is very
Right.
ceremonial.
Yeah.
Notice I had the small one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, folks.
Okay, thank you, Molly.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your.
I'm sure you'll be a good leader.
I'll try. I can only do my best. Okay, so we have a lot on our plate today, and so pardon me? Oh, we also need to have a vice chairperson nominated.
I'd like to nominate Bob Donnelly.
So it's going to do the same thing.
Okay.
You second that?
I second it.
All right. So
I assume you accept if you're voted in?
I will accept the nomination, yes, thank you.
okay. Any comments? Anyone? Okay.
I have a comment. I
Okay.
welcome Bob as our vice chair. Bob has had a long history with working with various committees, as everybody knows, and he's been an extremely valuable person on the committee. And along with Ann, she's worked her heart out and soul, and we're very happy to have them leading us this year.
Okay. So let's take a vote on Bob as vice chair.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Unanimous. All right, so we have a lot on our plate.
Time's up.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to.
See, this is live television.
I know. That's why I did that.
My phone's off.
Okay. All right, let's start again. I'd like to change the order of the agenda because when we put the agenda together, were not able to. We were collecting things very quickly for this agenda and for the special town meeting, which came up again quickly this season. So what I'd like to do is, unless anybody objects, take it as the school department report and the general government report on the roads, and then we'll go into the special town meeting warrant. And that will include an update on the TIF and Moderna. Okay, then we'll go into community preservation, the town warrant votes. If everybody is in agreement, we'll take the
end.
votes at the end. And then we'll go into the rest of the agenda, the other follow-up things. Okay? So, if the school department, why don't you come up and be first on our list here?
It's live TV. I just want to be on live TV.
Just for the TV audience, that we have requested from the school department and from general government periodic updates on the spending of the funds from the override. So take it away, folks.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will, call your attention to the spreadsheet. Don't pay any mind to what's bolded and what's not bolded when I converted it from a Google Doc to a Excel doc. The formatting was not necessarily, there's no particular rationale behind the bolds. I just noticed that on the screen. But the first thing on June 4th was twofold. One was to, the day after the override, one was to, bring back and restore the proposed cuts that were in the original budget. And the other was to start the hiring process because there was some additional FTEs in there.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Can we start off first, how much of the override was applied to the school and go from there?
4.7 million was
4.7? Okay.
was the schools. Yeah. So the first part. So this is kind of broken down into staffing, and staffing is at the top. We are almost done. We did have one resignation right on Monday, so there is a placeholder in there. But I'll call your attention to the top right here. Yes.
Can I ask one question, just going back to that? So the override did break out 4.7 for the schools, but my understanding was in year one that 4.7 million wasn't going to be completely spent. There was going to be part of that was put into an override stabilization fund for
And that was
future years.
700,000.
That's not included in the figure.
That's not.
That's not
4.7.
So 5.95 out of that 4.7 went to the schools. The remainder went to the stabilization fund, roads.
And
Snow removal.
and snow and ice and
Okay.
roads.
So their share was
Well,
4.7.
then there's that 509,000.
This
Yeah,
is
which
that.
is
Well,
also on
It
the
was on the
list
agenda.
Well,
today.
we'll talk about that
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
for a long time.
Okay. All right, so here we have, and I don't have a thing to, so I'm gonna have to rely on Mr. Bazzuco to do this, but you can see, what the positions were that were in the override, the salary that was placed into the override in column C, what was actually spent, and if you look at the top, actually, if we can go to the top, you can see that is actually a negative number. But don't panic, because if you go to the bottom, when you look at all of the hiring at the bottom, so if you can go down, Mr. Bazzuco, oops. Whoop, too far.
You said this was going to be easy.
Well, I assumed that I was going to have control. But right there, you can see where it says 87. When you look at all of the hiring, that is the hire down number at this point from retirements and people who have left the district. So if we can go back up to the top. You can see they're split out by school. So those are the new positions. These are only the new positions that are listed here. There are a couple new positions that we did make some calculated changes to. I'll point out that we hired a physics teacher. Good physics teachers are very hard to find and not inexpensive. So you can see a slight increase there. The task, which is our behavior program there, finding the right person there actually saves the district and the town lots of money because people are happy and being successful in an in-district program. A little further down, you can see Balch School Adjustment Counselor. We did make a calculated hire here, hired someone experienced and bilingual, which is huge for that school and that population. We're extremely happy with the people we brought in. We had about 28 new to us people at our induction 2 days with them, and we're really excited about the people we were able to hire despite kind of getting a late start. The one caveat, and we're just going to leave it in as a placeholder, the ELL position at the Balch, which is no, I'm sorry, the ELL position, if you go up at the Prescott, or maybe it's down, sorry. Making poor Tony work. That really is a placeholder. That person unfortunately just decided to move to Connecticut. I don't know why anyone would move to Connecticut. Sorry, Mrs. Budenhofer. So we have re-advertised for that position. So we go a little further down, curriculum materials, and we are very much in the process of determining that. It's very hard to have a serious conversation about spending money you don't have yet. And by the time we knew we had that money, it was pretty much 2 weeks out, and it's not the right time to have a serious conversation about how we are going to spend that money. But you can see at the top of the curriculum refresh, that is our ELA curriculum that is being piloted right now in our elementary schools. We're expecting a purchase in January 2020 of that. Enhancing EL materials, we did have an initial conversation about that.
On the curriculum refresh, it'll be purchased in January 2020, so it'll be, what, in line for September 2020 to begin anew?
Well, we are hoping to get hands-on and using some of it this spring. Okay, it will be kind of a hybrid as we go through.
Okay.
But definitely, fifth gear by the time September comes around. So a lot of PD in the spring around that.
Yeah.
And we do want people to start using it and getting used to it and finding out how to use it, but it will be kind of a hybrid.
Okay.
Right now, we're piloting 3 different programs across the district. So, only one of those programs will be selected. So there will be some ramping up. English language learning materials, we've spent about $27,000 of that. You can see we've got about $20,500 left. In that line, career pathways, and right now we are working on our healthcare career pathways, and those are our initial purchases to start that. We are starting a partnership with Moderna, and which is a huge, it's a whole nother area of healthcare that, pharma, disease, messenger RNA piece, because when people think of healthcare, they think of doctors and nurses. There's a lot more to it at this point, but they're very interested in partnering with us for internships, opportunities coming into the classroom to start off, so we've started that conversation. I have to thank Mr. Mizuko for setting that up. However, I will say, I guess Wednesday is Bagel Day, and we were there on Tuesday, so I'm deeply disappointed in that. Some more advanced training planning would be better. As we get down, intervention materials, and those are too far. Those are materials that are going to be used in the classroom. We will be at the bottom. We're going to be measuring with an assessment piece, and then we will be planning personalized learning around making sure kids are making adequate progress in measuring that. We're looking at an October purchasing for that assessment, which right now looks like it will have an intervention piece with it as well. But we have not bought that yet. Personalized learning tools, we are starting that conversation. We'll be in the beginning of October. Obviously, September is about getting started, building routines and relationships. So that is a conversation that is we'll be starting in a few weeks. Project Lead the Way, we have our Computer Innovators and Makers course set up and ready to run, and we did purchase materials of that. There are 2 more courses that we are going to be purchasing materials for to implement, hopefully maybe in the spring, but definitely for next year. Okay, so a little further down. Professional development, these are still in conversation. Problem-based, project-based learning training. So we have 6,200. We have not determined where we are going to put that into our PD calendar. And then that intervention training and coaching, that will go along and follow the purchasing materials and the assessment piece. And we need to plan on that. But the first step is to buy the materials to do the assessing, get the intervention pieces, look at what other intervention pieces in there, and bring in that PD as well. Then at the bottom, we have all of the restored cuts, and those were reversed on the 4th of June. It was a priority for this administration, the school committee, to let people know as soon as possible that their jobs were going to be restored. So that was job 1 while we were trying to do job descriptions and and those pieces as well. So June was a very, very crazy busy month. But you can see all those cuts that were identified at town meeting have been restored.
So can I ask a question?
Mhm.
So from a staffing perspective, it seems like you have fulfilled all of the asks that you requested from the override,
Yeah.
except for the one position at the Prescott, because she decided to move from Connecticut, to quote Dr. Thompson, for whatever reason. Okay.
Yeah.
So that part's done. So
Right.
we're good. We're golden. And the savings on that was about 90K, 85, 90K.
The total hiring, the savings was about
Steady.
90,000.
Okay, so you
Between
still-
retirements, people that have left the district for other reasons, and the new hires.
Okay. And what will happen to that money that you saved?
We will hold it in reserve because there's always a surprise that comes down. And actually, we have an increase in English language learning students that has exceeded our crystal ball look early on. And we have had some special ed move-ins that have caused our sub-separate programming to be out of compliance that we need to address. So
Okay.
stay tuned to next Wednesday.
Yeah, if those funds remained
And-
unexpended, they'd end up becoming free cash. If the district didn't expend them at the end of the year, otherwise your next year's budget just starts at a base of $80,000 less.
Right.
And did you have anybody leave special ed? And anybody over 22?
We did not this past year. No one aged out.
No one aged out?
No one aged out, and we did
Anybody
not
move
have, we had one move out, but we had 4 or 5 significant move-ins.
Okay.
So this is the challenge. We use the term shifting sands. We actually were pretty lucky this year because we don't have centralized registration, and elementary registration does not necessarily happen during the school year, during the summer. But we had 2 parents who brought their IEPs in, and we were able to get ahead of that. Otherwise, we only have about 1 week to react. So with that, we had 3 students move in that came to us with one-to-one programming. We were able to move 2 of them into a substantially separate program. But instead of needing 3 assistants as the plans were written, we will probably need 2. And just so everybody knows, we do take a long look at how our staff is, we didn't instantaneously knee-jerk at that. We took a long look at what our current staffing needs are. Our new SPED director, Student Services Director, Lori Cimino, has looked at every single program, trying to see if we are adequately staffed and if we can shift staff first. So that is always the first move.
Okay.
Good. Anything else?
So the drum roll on this
Mhm.
is, we're not at 6.7 yet?
No, we're not at 4.7 yet.
I mean, 4.7.
Yeah.
Right, sorry.
We're close, but
But
most
I
of
Give
it.
them the extra 2?
Right. No, but the big piece, the personnel piece is there. It's basically, making final decisions on materials and
Yep.
programs. So, and, we would rather be, and the problem, you can't really do that over the summer because the staff is not there over the summer.
Right.
And we'd much rather spend wisely than just spend.
Did you interview every one of the new people yourself?
I appoint every single one of the people.
Okay,
I was not lonely this summer at all.
I didn't think so.
No. Yeah. So my plan is going forward is to basically keep working off of this same spreadsheet.
Okay.
Okay.
So that way the format and as I said to Mrs. Haley, this is what I planned on doing with the school committee ongoing. So I get to practice with them first and then come and visit you. But that way it's in a similar format instead of changing colors and all that sort of thing. So.
I think it's very beneficial that we have a public presentation like this to show how the money is being spent.
Mhm.
Because people have expectations, as you do,
Right.
about what's going to happen here and what the end result is.
Yep.
I think that, thank you for the information. It's good to see that we're making progress utilizing the override funds. And that will allow us next year, I think the challenges will be, from a pledge perspective, in terms of just monitoring our head count additions per the pledge. So
Yeah.
this is very good information. I do appreciate it.
The head count was one of the reasons why I had asked you guys to prepare this, because it will be an issue going forward. We're trying not to make it an issue, but
Right.
we just want to make sure that.
Challenge.
So could you tell me what the student population is, how many left the system, how many came in, and what was the net result?
Well, I will share. Brought extra things for everybody, so not sure what. This is the total by grade boy girl count. I'm not quite sure why we count boys and girls, but some
Can I
traditions.
have two so I can give one to
Oh,
Molly?
all right.
Thank
yes,
you.
all right.
It's very 1950.
There you go. So that's the overall count. And then I've got kind of like the per classroom, because the other challenge we have is, how many classrooms at each grade. But if you look, let me kind of,
Good for me.
sorry, I can't, I obviously have lost my teacher touch because I cannot hand out paper and talk at the same time anymore, but we'll work on that. So if you look at the first sheet I handed out, which is the summary, the far right column is last year's number at 3467. We're at 3498 right now, so that's a net 32 increase in students. And you can see if you go from the total column to the far right column, you can see where the increases are by grade level. We did have a small 5th grade, now 6th grade, and the 8th grade that has left the middle school that are now freshmen was a very big class historically. So the middle school has shrunk a little bit, but every other school has grown. And if you look at the other side, of course, having small elementary schools is great. It's, a lot of community. It is a challenge to make sure you have equal distribution of staffing, and you can see where the class sizes are. If you look on those little tan columns, those are students that are serviced mostly outside of the classroom, and they do include that number, so those numbers drop for the majority of the day, 80% of the day. But you can see that the Balch has increased by 5 students overall. A significant number of those students who have come to the Balch are English language learners. They're well over 100 at this point. The Callahan has...
Excuse me, 100 in the Walsh or 100 overall?
100 overall in the Balch, not new.
Okay.
Yeah.
But all
Yeah.
100
Approximately
are English
a
language
third
learners at
of the
different
third of the
levels?
students at the Balch are English language learners.
Okay.
A little less than that. Okay. The Callahan increased 23, and I will remind everybody that Avalon Bay, the first phase, came on this year, and they are in the Callahan district. Cleveland increased by 19. The Oldham increased by 23. Or 30, sorry, students. And the Prescott increased by 11.
So can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
So in looking at these numbers, the class sizes seem reasonable, right? Under 25, but there are some areas and pockets, especially in the Oldham, where they go up to 23, 24, 25, which starts to get into an area where it affects the educational quality for the students.
Right, but
Okay, I was just going to ask, what are we doing to try to realign them? Are we going to try to break Norwest Woods down differently, or what can we do to try to realign them so that the distribution is more even? Like in Callahan, you've got classes with 14. I assume that's because some of them might be you have substantial service needs. That's probably why that is, but in the Oldham, it seems like there is an overcrowding issue in individual classes.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the size of the classrooms. The Callahan classrooms are about two-thirds the size of the Oldham classrooms, so that's the first thing I would mention. With the Oldham, if you look at those numbers and you subtract the tan numbers to the left, you can see that they're really, they're large. I mean, this is the challenge with schools with only 2 or 3 grades in a classroom. You can't spread them over 10.
Right.
But we're getting to the point where phase 2 of Avalon will come on. I don't know how the heck I'm going to fit them into the Callahan school. And it might be a dirty topic, but we might need to look at
Avalon, the
redistricting.
only thing that they have done is have the townhouses And Ann and I went down there for a tour, and that's a question I asked them, how many children have, like, she said 9, of which 2 weren't school age yet. And how many did you say?
We have an increase of, at the Callahan, of 23.
No, I mean, you mentioned about Avalon, you said.
Well, we're only in phase 1, but there's 3 phases.
But you already have 23 new
We have
kids.
23 new kids. Not all of them are from
Avalon.
Avalon.
Do we know how
yeah.
many are from Avalon?
I want to say 11.
Yeah, and they told us 9 at the time, and
Right.
that's just the townhouses.
Right,
They haven't opened up the other, what was they say, 50 odd,
right.
45
you know,
townhouses
but-
out of 198?
Right, but typically, you know, townhouses, on average, would have more kids than apartments do.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
just what,
Right.
you know, what
Right.
records have shown nationwide. Not that you won't be getting more
Right.
kids, but it
Right.
isn't gonna be like 3 or 4 times more
Right.
kids than what we already
You know,
have.
for the most part, it's your 3-bedroom townhouses that have, you know,
Yeah, they
Right.
only have 2 3-bedrooms.
right.
I would like to suggest to this board that you set up some kind of an appointment with Dr. Thompson and actually take a tour of each of the different buildings. Because you know, everybody knows like one school nearest them and that sort of thing, and some of us have seen all of them over the years, but now when you go into the schools, you are more aware of the number of other things besides classroom work that the kids have to do within that building, and it just sort of spreads out all over the place. And I think that you've done a good job. In the last 10 years or so, they've done a good job about accommodating kids, but we have much more growth, and this is not going to be good. It's very tight in those buildings, all of them.
Right.
So I suggest, if in your spare time, I know you know a school or two, but you know, see them all.
Yep.
And I'm so glad that you won't charge us for those tours, right?
Only a small fee, only a small fee.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
Supplement the override.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah, but it has to be Wednesday when Bagel Day, though.
right, it has to be Wednesday during Bagel Day.
Okay, all right.
How often do you shuffle teachers between grades?
Depends on the year. We moved 1 or 2 this year, we moved 1 or 2 last year. And, you know, usually we ask for volunteers. You know, the Prescott is actually having teachers loop. So they'll teach 4th grade, and then they'll teach 5th grade, and they'll go back next year to teach 4th grade again. They started doing that this year. It's the first year they've done it. The advantage of that is you know the kids better as you move up. So,
Okay, and just quickly back to
Mhm.
Avalon, when is the second phase gonna come along?
Do you
Will you
remember?
see kids this year, potentially?
I think it's, I don't think this year, I think they are planning to finish it in the spring, and they would occupy
Patrick,
All right.
late spring.
I think,
This spring, it will be fully done, and,
That's what they hope.
Yeah.
okay.
I think we've
Yes,
issued
yeah.
55 CVOs so far.
yeah, assuming that there will be some more kids, I mean, who
Mhm.
knows how many. If in fact you look at it and say, you know, this is gonna be tight at Callahan, when would you have to look at and make a decision on redistricting, if that's what the solution would be?
We would probably have to start looking at it mid-year.
Okay. I mean, it
Yeah.
isn't something you could say, oh, let's
Yeah.
redistrict, and,
Right.
you know, tomorrow you have
right.
kids and with new assignments.
Well,
So
and it's, right,
complicated.
and it's not that easy, because the majority of our elementary students walk to
Right.
school.
Right.
And if they're not able to walk, you're gonna have to bus them.
Right.
And, you know, and previously, we now have a new
Yeah.
bus contract that
Yeah.
involves a routing software, which means we could look at some scenarios
Yeah.
along that line. But it would change our bus contract,
Yeah.
which was why we made the conscious decision of adding 3 buses in there as a placeholder, because
Mhm.
otherwise you negotiate an individual
Okay.
bus and they have to hold you hostage, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I
Well,
really like
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
I like the presentation that you put here.
Thank
Makes
you.
it nice and simple.
Good,
Thank you.
I'm basically just gonna do the same thing again, seeing you liked it so much.
Groundhog Day.
Groundhog Day, just slightly different numbers and more information. Okay, but if you have any
Great.
questions, reach out.
We'll do it,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you guys.
Tony, are you going to take the roads?
Yeah, geez, that's what you want to do next, we'll,
Yeah, might as well get these 2 things out of the way. Thank you.
So,
Plenty more
think we-
paper, always more paper.
I think we all
I think we
got
got
that.
We
it.
got
We got
Marty
it.
was way ahead of things.
Oh,
I'm
all
on
right
it.
then, well, that's the man when you want.
The report on the roads. This.
So this is just our annual resurfacing. As you know, it's sort of always a moving target. We come up with a certain projected list of road work we want to get done, and then a lot of things can absolutely impact what we get done. We do spend the full amount every year. It's just sometimes we have to swap roads around based on where the gas work has to get done, where the water work has to get done, how bids end up coming in. What I don't want to do is everyone to think that there's budgeted roads and override roads. There's no difference. We just allocate a total amount of money, and then that's the total amount of road work we've gotten done. However, if we backed out about $250,000 of that, on the back of this page, additional streets to be resurfaced as the result of the override. This is about $250,000 worth of work, but we make no distinction about which road gets which dollar. It's Chapter 90 plus the budget allocation plus the override allocation. So this is about $1.5 million, it's about $1.5 million worth of work, and roughly these streets here. So East Cross from Neponset to Route 1, Ridge Road, Glendale Road, Edge Hill from Dean to Glendale, Morningside Drive, part of Garden Parkway, Meadow Street, small part of Manhattan Street, Myrtle Street, Fales Ave, and St. Catherine Street, all getting done as a result of the override. But again, we don't distinguish it. Some of these get delayed. Some of these will get done in the spring.
Okay.
And if sometimes at the end of the year, with Chapter 90 money in particular, Chapter 90 money can accumulate. So if a bid comes in lower than you anticipate or a projected amount is lower, that just gets rolled into the next year's dollar amount. And sometimes with whatever gets left over, we do that, or sometimes a road ends up being more expensive than we want, it gets kicked off to a future year, or sometimes the decisions are, we get $29,000 left, well, what road can we get paid for $29,000?
Yeah. How do you differentiate between what roads you do bituminous concrete and what roads to do granite?
So it's a combination of a couple factors. One is sometimes what's already there. Two, with the aesthetics of the road. Three, the needs of the drainage. And four, just the general condition and getting the most bang for the buck. The narrower the road, the easier the concrete is. You generally don't like to do concrete on a road where you don't have parking on the side of the road. So if you think of what I call Lower Nichols Street or Nichols Street closer to Manhattan, you know that's concrete because it's going to be concrete. You wouldn't want anyone even trying to park on that part of the street.
Yeah.
But you sort of factor that all in and then look at what the amount of space that you have. The concrete you generally try to only do when you have a larger pad. The other thing that we run into is sometimes you can or can't do it based on whether or not you can meet some ADA requirements. So sometimes you'll have an existing section of sidewalk and you replace it with what's there and it's compliant. Other times, usually to do the granite, you need to make sure you have enough space to make it fully compliant.
Gotcha. Okay.
Do we have, like, is there a rating system to determine how to get on, or is it done by age? What's the process for getting streets on the list?
The way, what cities and towns do is there's training systems out there for basically road rating, and it's an engineering system where based on the condition of the road, you assign it a value 1 through 10, 1 being terrible, 10 being the best. And then you go through and you rate your roads and you update that every year. Especially here, it tends to change after the winter. Mark's gone through the proper training to do that. I've never done it myself because it gets fairly technical when you're talking about the percentage of the road that hits A or B or C, but you assign it a rating, and then your priority starts with what your ratings are. But then you got to go in, you got to have your engineers, and we're lucky we have in-house engineers, adjust that for a couple of things. One of them is you may have a bad road that just financially you can't afford to do, so you let it go. If it's a 2-mile stretch or a 3-mile stretch and it needs to be fully reclaimed, you're talking about $4 or $5 million. We might say, well, gee, this road really needs to get done. It's a $4 million project. You then adjust it for traffic flow. So you might have a road that ranks lower that needs a lot of work, but if it's very lightly trafficked, it's going to get less priority. Your gateways, your connector roads are always going to get your priorities. So it might be that, Ann lives on Nichols Street, which is a fairly busy street, so that's going to get a higher priority than where Allen lives, where it's just a residential street. Those streets also tend to last longer. So you then factor that in. We then look at what work needs to get done. Sometimes if you're lucky, you can just do what we call a mill and fill, and you're just sort of scratching off that top surface and throwing some new surface down. Other times it might mean that you need to do drainage work, you might need to do new compaction work, you might need to do completely new sidewalks, and then you start saying, well, wait a minute, this is a small stretch of road, it's not traveled very frequently, it's not in great shape, but do I want to spend $600,000 on a road that serves 12 people versus I could take that $600,000 and serve a road that's going to serve 50 people 20 times a day. And then at the last sort of adjustment we make it a post-winter adjustment, because sometimes the winter will just beat up a road worse than you anticipate, and you sort of go into the winter with what I call a nice 6, and you say, that's a good road. If they were all 6s, I'd be happy. and then for some reason a plow hits it wrong, or the frost heave hits it wrong, and the winter comes up and it's just been beaten to heck, and you say, okay, it's time to do it. And then we try to make sure we're always following gas work and water work. That doesn't always happen for a couple of reasons. One of them, if gas work ends up being emergency work, we can't tell them no, they can't open the street up. Sometimes they've assured us that there's no work that needs to be get done, and then something happens. Sometimes things can break. We can have great water, great sewer, great gas infrastructure on a street. Breaks happen, and then it's while we're tearing up a street we recently redid. So you start with your rating, and then you factor in all these different things, and then you come with your final list, so to speak.
I will say I've been doing a lot of walking lately, and I'm trying to hit different neighborhoods in the town, and I have to say that the people that are doing our roads seem to be doing a good job. Excellent job on the cement sidewalks that have been put in. Cottage Street looks like a whole new world, just to name one. But it really has made a difference in the look and the feel of some of the neighborhoods.
Absolutely, new street is, it's like a haircut.
Yeah. So how late can we do more paving?
Depending on the season, you're usually finishing up sometime in November. It really depends on the scale of the job and what you're doing, because once snow starts to fall, it just doesn't generally work. Once the frost hits, you really can't do it. But it depends. If it's a smaller street that we're just sort of mill and filling, you can do that a little bit later into the year. And then we try to start as early as we can in the spring with anything we didn't get done. We try not to kick a whole project into the following year, because even though we want to increase how much we're doing on roads, you want to try to balance it out so you're not doing so much all at once.
Okay.
I think the good news, in terms of the override dollars, that this is, the override has allowed us to expand the list.
Absolutely. Between the amount of money we're able to keep in the budget as a result of the override that we have as a general fund allocation, our Chapter 90 money, and the override money, this is the largest single-year investment for road work, for just repaving, that we've ever had. We feel reasonably confident, depending on how the economy goes, we can keep this amount of work up every year. And that's not to say that we won't add to it. The goal at a minimum in the subsequent budget years is going to be to add at least enough to keep up with inflation, because we don't want to do is not add to it at all, and then the $1.6 million in road work that we're doing 10 years from now becomes the functional equivalent of $1 million in road work. So, and then if we have additional resources, it's going to be a priority area to try to get us up to, in a perfect world, we'd be at, I think Braintree has one of the best paving programs in the state. They do twice their Chapter 90 budget out of their general fund allocation. If we could get to there, we'd be doing $2.7 million a year. We'd be happy. We're reasonably happy that 1.6 is enough to keep up. We just have a backlog, as most communities do. So another option in future years, if we don't have too heavy of a capital plan and we have a good free cash number, we can try to get caught up. You can always throw some free cash and say, well, let's get a couple extra $100,000 worth of road work done. But then again, that comes into competition with everything else we want to throw a couple $100,000 of free cash with.
Okay.
All right. Anybody? No? All set on that. Thank you. Now we're going to special town meeting warrant.
I do have, those of you who are town meeting members will get these in your mailboxes soon, but we have copies of the yellow sheets, if anyone would like them.
Great,
No, thank you.
I would love that, Mr. Mizuko.
Thank you. I was glad to save the town postage.
Thank you.
Okay, paper is sustainable, so.
A little bit thick.
Love it, thank you so much.
Yep. And, well, I know John's grabbing for one. Russ, one? It's on, yeah. And these they're getting mailed out, I think, tomorrow, so folks should have them over the weekend or Monday, and they are otherwise on the internet.
Okay.
Let's see what we have here for some sort of order. How are we going to do this?
Okay. I don't have the list. over
Where
here.
did the list go?
It's,
Oh, it's on the second page of the other thing.
second of the
I
page.
knew there was an order someplace.
Yeah.
Too much paper. Okay. All right, the first one on the list is actually Moderna. So why don't we jump in there? And Alan, if you could do your...
I could. If you just give me 1 second to get a couple of things together. Okay, you know, as we've heard, Moderna is back for another TIF for another project, which they're doing. It's adjacent to their existing piece of property. Their intention is to make a campus, particularly large investment that they intend to make in the town. If you look at some of the documents that I gave you, let's start first with the one with the pretty colors. What this does is show the amount of additional money we're going to be getting into Norwood, even with the TIF. The TIF, when everything is said and done, you know, is equivalent to approximately 50% over 10 years. You know, the percentages differ. They'd like a little bit more money up front, with a little less and more towards the out years. But the bottom line is, when everything is said and done, and again, as people know about TIFs, is that the TIF only applies to the new value of the property. It doesn't refer to or is charged anywhere to the existing piece of property. It's only to the new investment that comes out of this. So the bottom line is that even with the TIF, after 10 years, Norwood will get over $1.5 million more of additional taxes over that 10-year period, and after 10 years the TIF goes away, and they'll be charged, you know, the full taxation.
That's the line in green.
Right, that's the line in green. In total, if you look at all the taxes over a 10-year period that Moderna is going to give us, when you look at their existing property as well as this new development that they're going to be doing, it's actually, it's close to $13 million worth of revenue, which is very substantial, and you know, it's certainly welcome news to Norwood. I mean, they're a great company to deal with. So we, in the end, gave them a 50% TIF. That was a negotiation. They were looking for more than that. We wound up giving them 50%. Which, you know, some people say, well, you know, why 50%? But if you look at the comparison sheet that we have, it says Mass ED IP comps. 50% is actually pretty good. If you look at a couple of our neighbors, you have MS Walker in Dedham.
Yeah.
Over, what, a 15-year period, they're getting a 65% TIF, including 100% for the first 5 years. Friends in Walpole, the big development they had at Siemens, you know, which is near the Walpole Mall, huge development, $300 million. Over a 20-year period, they're getting a 75% TIF. So in spite of that huge development, they're going to get, you know, a limited amount of tax, you know, for that 20-year period. And, you know, it's 5 years of 90%, 5 years of 80%, so on and so on and so forth. So they're not going to really get the full benefits to that project for upwards of 20 years. In the case of Norwood, you know, on the sheet that I just showed you, you know, it's 50%, you know, in total for 10 years, and then after 10 years, the TIF goes away. And, you know, all the taxation comes to Norwood. So this was voted on unanimously by the Economic Development Commission. Moderna did a presentation in front of the Board of Selectmen, I think it was last week, I believe. I believe, Tony, you know, it's also approved unanimously by the Selectmen.
Yep.
So, you know, we're excited about this project. You know, they're looking to, you know, to develop in Norwood. You know, we're particularly excited about the programs that they're going to be starting with the school system. You know, as Dr. Thompson noted, and we think this is a great company and it's a great deal for Norwood.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do we do, obviously this is straight tax revenue, which is great. Do we do any sort of economic impact analysis to see what the outward effect of them moving their campus here is in terms of additional income generated in the town, outspending within the community, in terms of restaurants, all that kind of stuff?
They projected a number, I think it was $2 million a year
Yeah.
is what they project out. The real sort of meat of that isn't, I mean, it's the restaurants, it's the gas and stuff, but it's the services they end up buying. So their number's $2 million a year. That's probably an accurate number, but sometimes it's sort of the soft services that you don't see, that they hire a cleaning company locally, or they hire a pest control company locally, or a plumber, and that's really where those dollars come in. We don't directly get that tax revenue, but that economic impact is huge. And it's anecdotal, but we just hired a police officer in Norwood whose wife works at Moderna. And that's sort of how they found the town, is that she took a job at Moderna. Her family's from somewhere in the area.
Yeah.
They're from Connecticut, so they're leaving Connecticut. So Dave's right. Well, you know, I don't know why you'd want to be in Connecticut, but you're leaving Connecticut. So he saw an opportunity in Norwood, experienced police officer, which saves us a fortune. So
Saves
you're
us
now starting to
money
see
and
sort of
training, yeah.
that social impact of the company being present as well.
Yeah.
And they are. It's also important to remember they're not a huge water and sewer user. They are a very big electric user, so that helps
Yeah.
us as well.
And Alan, there's gonna be new jobs brought with it too.
Absolutely. What this
It's the main
is
reason
that-
we do it.
Right, I mean, they're moving their R&D from
Cambridge.
Cambridge. I believe they're gonna be moving 250 jobs and hire an additional 100 over and above that. And like I said, the intent is to have a campus.
And they have a good reputation now for meeting their tips.
Right.
They've actually
They have no problem
exceeded it.
meeting tips. You know, a little later, you asked me to give the status of some of the tips that we've already given. I could talk about those. Some of the ones have been, you know, what's the term, decertified, you know, because they haven't met their requirements. Moderna, you know, did it and did it very early. You know, we have no problem with Moderna. So,
Okay. On to Napontet Meadows land acquisition. Tony?
Do we want to vote on them as we?
No, we'll vote on them at the end.
Okay.
Sorry, just flying through an email. So, this is a small parcel of land, about 1.5 acres, completely surrounded by town-owned land that can only be used for open space or recreation. It was deeded to the current owner sometime in the 1960s. She is a wonderful lady now, well into her 90s, and looking to divest herself of a parcel she has dutifully paid taxes on since the 1960s, for which has effectively no value. So they approached the town and said, since we own everything around it, would we be interested in buying it? We said if the price is right, and the price is just $10,000. It's 1.5 acres. It's actually a good idea for us to acquire something where we own everything around it. And that 1.5 acres does add to our numbers for our 40B exempt property total. And if we ever wanted to do some walking paths or something at that property, we'd probably want to make sure we own the whole thing. It really is kind of funny. You'll see the maps in the yellow sheet. If you go to, I almost forgot we had these maps. So that's it right there.
okay.
So as you can see, it's kind of like we probably should own that, considering we own the parcel all
Yeah,
around
that,
it.
that, is that wetlands, you know?
Most of it is.
Okay.
We'd be able to do some passive recreation.
Yeah, but it's not a developable piece of property.
Some of the area around it would be, but when we were given the property,
The river?
it was with the understanding it would only be used for open space and
Okay,
recreation.
Good, okay, great.
Okay. And so where is this money coming from?
We're gonna take it from existing funds, so it'll come out of the general government budget, likely our consultant's line. Not the ideal place to take money from necessarily, but we feel we can swing it, whereas it's only $10,000 and we don't have free cash certified yet.
So you're going to ask at town meeting for a transfer from
Correct.
one
Yeah.
account to another, but you haven't identified the account yet?
Correct,
Okay.
With no additional spend.
correct. Yeah, $10,000 for 1.5 acres of land is a good deal.
That brings me to asking, do you know, did we meet the deadlines and the dates to get our certified free cash within a reasonable length of time this year?
Well, so there's actually no deadline to certify your free cash per se. We had a situation a couple years ago where we spent it before we had it certified. So it doesn't really matter when you get it certified, you just can't spend it until you do. I think we just about have numbers to DOR, so it's just waiting for them to go through their process.
So, 1 year, we were a little late when we got our numbers
December.
into the DOR.
Yeah,
So-
you're talking about the Schedule A. Yeah, there's been no problem with the Schedule A.
Okay.
So all of our information is with DOR right now, we're just waiting for DOR to certify.
Correct.
Didn't know whether Munis and the conversion.
Oh, you have no
made
idea if any of it's
difference?
accurate because it's, we're pulling up money from numbers from two different systems and hoping it all balances. So the DOR may never get us a free cash number,
Okay.
but
All right, just had to ask. Okay, next one is, Tony, you get a relief for a few minutes. The next one would be the Saints land acquisition, and that's CPA funds. Mr. Hall,
Sean, you wanna come up?
why don't both of you come on? Patrick, come on up too.
Is this
That's a treat for
little
you, John.
dessert?
That's for you, John.
Thank you for
Encourage
coming.
people to
So
attend the
thank-
meeting.
Someone has to do more than I'll be doing to earn that.
Welcome, John, welcome, Patrick, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Outgoing Chair. Ms. Incoming Chair, with your permission, I'm going to counterpunch and Mr. Deshane will do the primary presentation.
Fine.
Oh,
All right. There we go. So.
okay.
Unless you wanted to switch it back.
I'll switch it back. The chairman
Okay,
Well, that
folks.
was entertaining. A short bit of context here. We're about to be into the second year of the Community Preservation Act, and it has a normal cycle. In the fall, we receive applications from people who think they have eligible, worthy projects, and we spend the next several months gathering information, refining the proposals, and selecting the ones to approve. Then there is a public forum, and when you allow the public to comment on these proposals. Sometimes that's interesting in terms of further tweaking them. And the final approval is by town meeting, normally at the annual town meeting. And so we've had now a total of 5 projects, the chapel being all by itself, and 4 projects in the past year. And we had been told that the St. Street land acquisition might be a viable project during our regular cycle. But as often happens with land negotiations, you didn't have everybody on board until after the normal period. But we have enough funds left over, and then some from our cycle last year. This is basically being put forward as a continuation of the last cycle. We have the forum that is called for in the law scheduled for next Wednesday. And any votes we need to take, which I'll mention shortly, will be squeezed into the period leading up to special town meeting, where this article will allow us to get the final approval that we need.
And your meetings are also televised, and people can go along with all the details if they choose.
Yes, anyone who is interested can show up at 7 o'clock at the Civic Center in the Willett Room and hear a presentation on this property. You'll also have an opportunity to participate in our annual public input on the setting of goals for the 4 areas of CPA, and that's been very helpful to us in the past. Expect it to continue. So what went into the warrant draft was a figure of $325,000. The land purchase itself is $280,000. 4 other well-defined costs: closing costs, legal, conservation restriction, DPW cleanup, land survey, contribute another $28,000. And then we put in $17,000 as something of a placeholder for what Mr. Mizuko had suggested we fold into this project, which is preliminary park design. We have a bid on that, and it would require more, but we're not raising the request here because there are a number of different ways that we may choose to deal with that, including moving that into a second project in a different cycle. So what we're proposing is what we proposed in the earlier communications, which is $325,000, and that's what we're looking to get action on from the town meeting.
Can I ask a question? You've had it for 2 years, correct? So there's been, shall we say, money coming in from the state and
Yes.
from our taxes. Out of the 2 years, how much money came in? What's the drum roll?
About $1.2 million.
Yep.
About $1.2 million each year
No, total.
total.
I think it's more than that
It's
because
more
there
than
was
that because it's
there
about
was- there was a-
$700,000.
Wait,
First-
one person at a time.
there was a
What the-
first year that was before we were in a position to spend anything.
It's about 600 grand a year, full year.
That's the taxes.
So
And then
Mark,
there's the state too.
what were you thinking? $1.2 million or?
Yeah, well, it's about 600,000 a year.
Okay.
Maybe 628 this year.
All right.
We have about $1 million left, and we've appropriated maybe $600,000-700,000. So
Yeah.
$1.2 million can't be right. $1.8 million sounds right to me.
Okay.
We're over $1 million.
$1,000,000
We
sounds
are
right to me,
definitely
too.
over $1
Yeah.
million.
Okay.
So just to confirm for everybody at home, this costs the taxpayers nothing additional, it comes out of existing funds that have been pulled from their tax bill.
The key word is additional, yes. We did get some good news earlier this year, which is that the state modified their formula and their fee structure. And so
Which is in your
we're-
packet.
we will be getting a higher match than we would have previously gotten.
Awesome.
Any questions?
No?
Any comments?
Great
Just
stuff.
quickly, as I understand that this cost is based on appraisals which have been accepted both by the community as well as by the owner.
Yes, that's an excellent point. That is what accounted for the delay from our normal springtime until now, was getting everybody on board with appraisals that they could all support.
Okay. Good.
Anything else? No? Okay.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's a great
Thank you, John.
project.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, zoning,
Which one are we on
zoning,
now?
wait a minute, school, the school department got out here,
Yes.
the 509,000.
It's being transferred back.
Okay. So Tony, you wanna step up and we'll talk about the $509,290 for the transfer of funds?
Sure, I wanted it to go to unrestricted funds for the general manager, but, the school committee recommended it go back into the override stabilization fund, and the selectmen happened to agree with that.
Excuse me, could you just slow down a little bit when you talk? Because you talk very fast and some people have trouble keeping up with what you're saying. So if you talk a little slower, it would be great.
I will endeavor to talk slower. The $509,000 was money added to the school budget last year to prevent some of the layoffs.
Yes.
The deal, if you will, I don't know if deal is the appropriate word, but the school committee said if the override passes, we don't actually need this money in the budget, we'll return it to the town. The recommendation is that the way that get returned, per se, is to go into the override stabilization account. We want to build the override stabilization account up as much and as long as we can before we start drawing it down and possibly looking at having to cut budgets again or looking at another override down the road. So we have roughly a 5-year plan. Of course, the economy, you never know where that's going to go. You never know what other obligations we're going to have. The more money we can build up in that fund, when we draw it down, it'll last even longer. So the goal is, let's make the override last as long as possible. The only other things we could do with it, you could put it into a different fund. We always have different funds that need money, but since this was related to the override and the budget, the thought is put it in there. Let's build that fund up as long as possible, put as much in it at different times as we can. And then when we have to start drawing it down, assuming we're looking at an override again, 7 years, 5 years, 10 years, you could look at an additional year, or 2 years, or more. Given where our deficits have been in the last 10 or so years, that extra $500,000 could be as much as a year, possibly 2 years, extending out the need for a big increase in taxes.
Can I ask you one question on that?
Sure can.
So I don't have any, objection to this. My question is, when we go to do loan or bond ratings to borrow, when they evaluate the total amount of capital that we have in the bank, do they separate out and look at, this is in your override stabilization fund and this is in your regular stabilization fund? Or do they just say, you have $35 million in stabilization and that's how we
That's more
do
or
it?
less what they look at. I mean,
Okay.
they would prefer us to, they want you to have money in every account, but they're really looking at how much cash do you have on hand. Because even though that can only be used for an override, to balance the budget in relation to the override, they look at cash you actually have access to.
Okay.
Whereas a pension fund is something that we have a liability for, but it's not cash we have access to. The OPEB fund is technically a trust fund. We don't have access to that cash, but it's basically, here are your obligations, how much cash do you have?
Okay.
The thing though that did ring true when we were talking about the override originally, and we were talking about our policies and that sort of thing, I had a copy of a letter from the folks that we go out to borrow from, I think it was, and they did say that, we do have to be careful and we do have to put some money in our stabilization funds, but we also have to pay down OPEB.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a combination.
I just wanted to make sure that putting it in the override stabilization fund wasn't going to penalize it when we go to borrow for something, say,
No.
a middle school, right? That's going to be a significant
No, I
project.
mean, money in any fund balance is good. The impact on the bond rating of an additional $500,000 into the OPEB fund or the pension fund, negligible.
Okay.
Here it shows an extra $500,000 on our balance sheet. At some point, we're going to spend that. So what that happens to be is when it'll build up for a couple of years. then it'll get spent down. So how long do we want to go before you have to cut things out of the budget?
Okay.
Things that we want and like.
I think you've answered my question, because my question was, why didn't we consider the stabilization fund? Because I believe it was still under our policy level for funding, if
We
I
are.
remember
It
right.
still is, yeah.
Yes.
So, but, and my first thought was that why wouldn't we put some of it or all of it into stabilization fund if it will enhance our ability for positive bond ratings, given that, you know, we have a very large project we're probably borrowing for in the next several years. But I think I take your answer to be, it really wouldn't make any difference if they're looking at things in totality.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a question. So your recommendation would be to take that money and put it into the override stabilization. However, it looks like Forbes is not going through in the timeline that we wanted to go through. And it's going to cost us money that we haven't taken into consideration for this year's budget. And if it,
We have though, the
have.
bond payment for this year, for this fiscal year for the Forbes Hill property, it's a band payment, is budgeted.
and that's
As well
due
as,
when?
when is the bond payment? Is it December? Yeah. So
And
December.
how much is that?
500 and,
I believe the interest cost is over 300,000, about
Over
370.
but that's in
And
the
then there's
budget.
other
We've
costs
appropriated
going
that
on,
money.
too. There's
Yeah,
other-
we do have $75,000 in the budget for sort of subsistence maintenance at Forbes. We've spent about $8,000 or $9,000 to date. There's a couple POs out there, so we're roughly tracking to make sure we're kind of able to keep the building mothballed. We might axe it in January if a sale doesn't go through, but the money's appropriated to take care of Forbes for the whole year.
Okay, so the bottom line is, we're not gonna be short, you know, if the deal doesn't go through.
Correct.
Okay.
And the complicated thing with that is we did foreclose is not the right word, but it's the word I use, on the deposit of the property. So we are sitting on an additional $500,000 that has to get used towards the purchase price or the sale price of the property, or I should say the bond. So
Do you
that
have
at
an
some point.
update and a timeline? I know it's changed because.
Well, we've scheduled a closing for October, it's either the 16th or the 18th, I have it in my calendar, and that's the final extension we'll do. If for some reason we're not able to close on the property, we'd likely put it back out to bid. But we did receive a non-refundable $500,000 deposit in the property, so I'm still confident we're gonna close.
And that money is in our bank.
Correct.
And that would cover any cost to relist it if we needed to.
Yeah, I mean, the cost to relist it is minimal. The only cost we would have where we would look for money is if we wanted to do sort of private advertising in business journals and stuff like that.
But the vision that this person has for Medical City, I mean, seemed fantastic. And I have heard that there's a video out that he has prepared of what his vision is in the buildings and so forth, which I heard is fantastic.
Yeah, he had shared one. It was sort of an, one of those architects' renderings of what, and those always look fantastic. Not to say that things won't get built that way, but architects always show you really nice pictures, and then what you get is sort of, no offense to architects, they do great work, but they show you a palace, and then you get something that's nice but never like there. The only challenge we're running into is it's a $250 million project, and the financing on it is complicated and takes time and changes along with the market. So it's where we're actually the little guy in what's a much, much larger process. Our concern is, can we just close on the property? But everyone that's working on it is working on a $250 million development project.
So it's his investors that's going to be coming up with the money
Correct.
for the different, so it's not the bank per se, it's the investors that he's trying to bring on board?
Yeah, well, it's you don't go to a traditional bank for a loan like this. There's financing agencies out there when you're
Right.
talking these dollars, so there's just a lot more due diligence. It's not about the purchase of the property, it's the rest of the project. So again, we're sort of the small piece saying, just give us the 13 million is all we care about, but he's moving forward with a $250 million project. That's what's large and complicated, and we're unfortunately a relatively small piece of that. And we don't want to get lost in the bigger piece of it, but we keep saying, we need to do this and that, and it's like, okay, you're the 13 million, you're actually the small potatoes. We're looking at the viability of a much larger project, which would be phenomenal for the town.
So we're dependent on the whole package in order to get our 13 million.
Yeah, we're 12.5 million.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that he's optimistic about getting his financing because he just gave you $500,000.
I would think so. I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah.
give up $500,000 unless I was pretty certain I was going to
Yeah.
have a project happen. And just so everyone knows, if you're not familiar with how these things work, so deposits like that get placed in escrow, and then as we reach the first closing date and we knew we weren't going to be able to close, the agreement that we sign is, well, all right, we will extend the closing date, 1 or 2 more times, but we now need to take possession of the non-refundable deposit. So Our lawyers write those up, we sign those documents, the purchaser's lawyers review them, they sign them. It goes to the escrow company's underwriters and their lawyers review it all before they cut a check. Then they say, okay, everyone's on the same page of this, money goes to the town. So now we're sitting on that deposit. It is a little funny because money, proceeds from the sale of a property under law in Massachusetts have to go towards the bond on that property. So I guess that's what we would do if we were to relist it. It's just a funny, usually you don't get a $500,000 deposit, but we're still confident that I had spoke with the doctor this week that we'll close on the 16th, and if we don't, it's either the 16th or the 18th.
So if we don't close, we have to now mortgage it. We can't do a band any longer.
Well, in theory, you probably could do a band
You
aid.
push it out another year.
You could push it out another year.
Yeah.
And that's principal only.
Interest
No,
only.
interest only.
At
I
the
mean,
end-
yeah, interest only.
Interest only, but I believe at the end of the second year, we'll have to, or the third year, we'll have to
Then we
make a
would be
principal payment.
responsible for major yearly payments until something else happens.
Sure.
Is there any TIF associated with this development?
No. Has not been discussed, so, and that would actually come later in the process, but.
Please. I do want to, I found this, it was funny, I was looking everything up the other day, and I found the information that we passed out at town meeting. And on the 509,290, which was what we're actually discussing, not Forbes, but the Budget Balancing Committee voted to recommend allocating free cash that had previously been earmarked for Forbes Hill to the schools to help with the FY20 budget if the override does not pass. If the override does pass, the money will be placed in the school committee
Reserves.
Yes, reserves. Until fall town meeting, when a decision can be made on how best to reallocate this money. I want to make sure that people understand that there wasn't an actual promise per se to put it in one account or another. We just have to make up our minds as to which account it should go in. I actually am not a proponent of putting it into the override stabilization fund. I would prefer to see it in the stabilization fund for our general business. And because the townspeople are going to be very savvy about how we're spending our override money. And I think that if we start adding bits and pieces and odd pieces to it, it sort of makes it a little harder to follow that bouncing ball. And this is just
We
thing
just
that
added
I've
on
got.
to the net result of
Yeah, I
the
mean,
override.
Yeah.
The plan called for roughly year one, $700,000 in, roughly year two, $350,000 in, year three, afloat, and then drawdowns. But we talked about health insurance savings may offset that. If we find other revenues, there's a possibility to offset that. So year one, we know is $700,000. That's easy. I'd love next year's addition to be $700,000. We'll have to see where we are in the context of the budget. But the more we're able to sort of do that, if the 5-year override lasts 7 years or lasts 9 years, or can we get it to last 11 years, that's the ultimate goal for the taxpayers. The other thing from a bond rating perspective, when we draw down on the override stabilization fund, they don't love that, but when you tell them this is specifically a fund established to draw down, there's less of an impact than when you actually take money out of the regular stabilization fund. So if we're going to put that $509,000 in the regular stabilization fund, you'd have to do it with the idea that you're never taking that out. Or if you are, it's years and years from now, only in a true emergency. So the override stabilization gives us the...
That might not be a bad idea, you know.
No, listen,
Because we have not been putting in what we should be in that stabilization fund. We've only been paying back on the loan.
Correct.
So,
when that's up in a few years, we can continue that budgetary allocation, and we should be okay to do that. We could allocate free cash to it. I think the school committee's recommendation, and they're not here anymore, so I can't speak for them, but we've gone to the taxpayers for something. Let's make sure we extend the override as long as we can. Because one scenario, let's say next year we can do another $700,000 into the override stabilization fund, plus this $500,000, and then maybe we do $400,000 and then $300,000, and we got to draw it down for 3 or 4 years. The 5-year override has now lasted 8 or 9 years. And then we may be in a position we start saying, all right, do we start doing those things in the budget we don't like doing? We cut a couple things out. We book a few revenues a little differently. We could be looking at an even longer time frame. You never know how the economy's going. So I know the selectmen's recommendation, the school committee's recommendation is extend the override as long as possible before we may have to go back to whacking the taxpayers.
I understand what Chairman Haley's saying for sure, but I do think.
As long as we all agree it goes in the bank, it's just
Yeah,
which
yeah,
account.
exactly. I mean, it's all going in the bank. I understand the idea of saving for the sake of saving, so you have that in case something catastrophic happens and you have money to be able to draw down. But I think that the town made a commitment to investing in Norwood as a community and to its future. And I think if we have this money that we weren't expecting to have anyway and to allocate it, I think us also making an investment in what the town invested in just supports their decision. So that's my feeling.
Okay. The other thing is that it was initially meant to be, it was initially free cash.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that was where part of my concept of getting it back into the sort of general budget, that in case we needed it. And right now, we don't have free cash to work with, and we're doing we're pulling a lot of money from different little buckets and trying to get that $200,000 for the what do we got, 200 for the additional funds for the town hall elevator. So you know, it's the initial intent was to go to Forbes. It was supposed to come back to us as free cash. We haven't been putting in the stabilization funds. I can see the other way. I honestly can see that. I am just wanting to put out on the table all of the different things that we have to, you know, when we're discussing what we're going to do with these funds and how we're going to pay for things tonight, we've got to think that we need to adjust different things. And so the school committee didn't specifically take a vote to where to put it, as I just said. So just to know that their thing was they want to get it back to us to be able to use it as we saw fit. So, okay. Anybody else, Bob?
No, I mean, I'm fine with putting it into the override stabilization fund. I had initially thought, you know, that there is a possibility that, and I wasn't thinking about all 509 going into the stabilization fund, but I think this discussion kind of highlights the fact that we do recognize the stabilization fund is important, in that, you know, as a commission, we will continue to ensure in our recommendations to town meeting that we work over the next couple of fiscal years to make sure it's fully funded as per our policy. And with that, I'm kind of warmed up to the idea of extending the opportunity to extend the override beyond the 5-year projection with this additional money. So I think
well, it's not a guarantee, but it will allow us to have a little bit more than we had planned to have it. And I guess it's a question of your vision here on that override piece. I can also appreciate what Anna's saying too, because that was money that was given in case it didn't pass, and we took it from somewhere, and it wasn't available for other things, such as in free cash. So, Alan, what do you say?
Well, first of all, I think the important thing is that the schools made a pledge to us in the spring to return the money to the town if in fact it wasn't needed. They've done that, so they've met their responsibility. I tend to agree with what Bob said. I think that I mean, you can go both ways, I get it, but I think it's, to me, putting more money in the override stabilization fund will give us more flexibility in the future to hopefully keep this going a couple of years longer than it normally would, without us having to go back to the taxpayer.
Okay.
I think, you know, Ann's point about the regular stabilization fund is well put. We certainly have to put more money in there, and hopefully we'll be able to do that and build it back up, as opposed to simply putting money back to account for the money that we took out from it a couple of years ago for the DPW building.
Okay. That it?
Okay, well,
Everybody?
Yep.
All right.
okay, thank you.
Okay, next thing, Coakley Middle School Design Services. Is there anybody here to speak to that?
Actually, Alan or I could speak to it, so.
Well,
You're so good at it, Tony.
Huh? Let Alan speak?
No.
Judy wants Alan to speak.
No, I mean, you know, I'm I was elected chairman of the middle school building
Oh,
committee.
you were.
Yeah,
You were
lucky
hiding
me.
that one.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
From one
Congratulations.
chair to another.
Yeah, well, thank you, right. We have a good group, by the way, really good committee.
Do you want
Um,
to say who's on it?
I'm gonna forget some
Okay.
people, but Dave Thompson, Dave Catania, and Teresa from the school department. Margot Frazek, who's the principal of the middle school. Mark Schubert. Let's see, Tom Maloney,
And Matt Lane,
Matt Lane,
Kathy
Uh,
Carney.
Kathy Connie. Did I mention Tom Maloney? And Tony.
Paul Riccardi.
And
Paul Riccardi is there, and also we've agreed to ask one of the elementary school principals to be a member of the committee, also be some of the decisions which we make, even though it's associated with the middle school, may affect the elementary school, so we'd like that perspective also. So, the bottom line is that, in order to continue in the program, we have to show the MSBA by a certain time point that we have made a financial appropriation to fund the feasibility study, which is to be done in accordance with their requirements. Assuming we do that, the MSBA will give us the go-ahead, and I believe we talked about maybe beginning of March when we could actually begin the process, the first part of which would be hiring an owner's project manager. And after that, we then go out and hire an architect, engineer, putting both out to bid and making decisions. The money, I'm not sure if it's reimbursed initially, but assuming that we do go into construction, the money will be reimbursed. We're not sure the exact number yet, but it's likely to be in the range of 50%. The $1.5 million we feel is more than adequate. We checked with AI3, who did the original estimate for us when they did the feasibility study several years ago. They believe that clearly should be enough. Likely will be less, but it does give us a little bit of a cushion. If we don't need that money, then it simply won't be allocated.
And is there some kind of a timeline, even though it's a plan at this point? When would this be completed, and then probably then ask MSBA for approval, and then we get the go-ahead to build?
Yeah, I mean, the real time crunch is to is to get this and I think several other things completed by the end of the year, and then MSBA will make a decision beginning, which we hope will be by the beginning of March.
Big picture, probably 5 years.
Yeah, we then go into the process. It's going to take, again, what would you say, Kathy, to go for both an OPM and an architect engineer, probably
The
3-4
OPM probably
months?
about 6 weeks, yeah, then the designer after that, maybe 6 weeks to 2
Yeah,
months.
yeah. So we're probably 3 to 4 months, and the report will probably take, anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending. So we're a little bit, we're a few years out. Probably around 2023, 2024 is when we'll
I think
actually.
that was the original
Yeah,
estimate.
we'll actually
If all
see
goes well,
something, yeah.
and we don't have any major
Right.
issues.
And one of the things that was noted at the meeting is that Norwood, was fortunate because there have been many communities who've applied for years. They haven't gotten anything from us. I mean, people went out from MSBA to see the Norwood Middle School, and I guess some of their reactions were priceless. They just didn't believe what they saw. You look at Blue Hills. Took Blue Hills 8 years to get their project, approved by
$85 million
MSBA.
for it
Right.
too, and they're only renovating.
And they're only
Right,
renovating, yeah.
right. So, we feel fortunate that we're in the process. We'd like to continue moving forward and to come up with a proposal and put it to town meeting to see what they'd like to do.
So when we get done, it's estimated to cost what, 85 million, 90 million?
Well,
Based on your
in the report, it was an $88 million
88.
project.
That
Was it-
report is how many years old?
2 years old. 2 years old.
Okay, we're up to 100.
More,
Okay.
yeah, that's where I'd put it.
It's again, we'll have to see. I mean, it's
Yeah.
probably closer to that number than the number which
And
is
that
actually in
also
the
would be
report.
an override.
Yes.
And probably happen somewhere in the vicinity of 2023.
Yeah, 2022, 2023 probably.
Right.
Yep.
Is the estimated cost more or less than the high school? More, right, because we're not getting the same percentage?
Well, it's just
Depends.
it's a different project. I mean, the high school was, what, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
We also got such a deal on the high school.
Yeah,
I
that's,
mean,
yeah.
similar sized communities, high schools are
Middle
going
school.
for 270,
Yeah.
270 million, 300 million. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's just we
Yeah, it
got
was-
such a deal on the
It
high
was
school.
just a great deal. It wasn't simply, you know, the model school. We had the same designer and the same
Contractor.
builder.
Yeah.
So the
Perfect
bottom
time
line
in the
for us was
economy.
about 38 million.
So can we do this again?
Well, we don't, I think we want to put ourselves in the position to make that decision. And if town meeting wants to go forward with it, fine. If they decide that it's too expensive, then we won't go forward with
But
it.
the high school turned out to be our share, about 38 million.
I think it
9
was,
million.
actually, I think it was less than that. I think
You may,
our
may be right.
share was probably
We won't
close
see
to about
those days
25,
again.
but probably close to about $25 million, and everything was said and done.
And again, that's not just the inflation. We just got such an incredible deal on the high
We did.
school. It's
We were the
we lucked
first to
out.
take a model school.
Right.
Yeah.
It was kind
And
of
of course, we had a very
the height of the
important
recession.
person
Yeah.
living in Norwood at the time.
Well,
Um,
when the
Very
economy's
good.
going
All right.
down, we might be in that same
So-
place when the middle school needs
about
to
2.5
get
years
built.
after the economy tanks is the perfect time
Yeah.
to build a school
Yeah.
building.
Okay,
His
well, let's
plan.
do it
We
again.
might actually end
Yeah.
up there with the middle school too,
Okay,
so.
so we're done with that.
Wait,
article?
1 second, 1.5, are you,
We-
confidence level on that?
We feel that that number, you know, should be sufficient. If I had to, you know, put myself out on a limb, which I don't like to do.
Go ahead.
Okay. I suspect it'll be less, but 1.5 is clearly should be enough. And if whatever we don't spend, we just don't spend.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
Madam Chair, would you mind moving the town hall elevator project up in case anyone has any questions for Kathy Carney? So she
Okay, yes, go right
Almost only
ahead.
go up.
So now we're looking at number 11 on our list.
Yeah.
So this is just a reallocation of funds to complete the, from existing projects to complete the town hall elevator renovation, which, like everything in this building, as soon as you try to make one little change, because it's such an old building, the costs end up going through the roof.
And the source of funding on this one?
Prior authorized borrowings that either haven't been used or will not be used.
Okay, we have a list here someplace
And
of the
we-
borrows.
Are we able to spend it? Well, you said it's a prior authorization. Just, and we can use a piece of that.
Correct. As long as you haven't contracted that money, any prior authorization, town meeting can appropriate for any other purpose.
Okay, so when we normally, we have a, for the TV audience here, we have a list of funds, accounts that were opened for us to do different projects. And normally what has happened in the past has been that the permanent building committee, when they are done with project, sends out a letter to selectmen, I believe, and says, you know, this is closed, it's okay to close that account, and we go from there. The money sits there for a while until we pull it out of there for a different project or a different thing. But that has traditionally been what we have done.
So do we get a letter on this?
This is, this one, no, we have not gotten a letter to close the account on this one. And
that comes from the,
and this is the account that was opened to do, I will say, the downstairs renovations, when engineering moved out of the spot they were in, into their new building. They moved the planning board into where engineering was, and then, what happened there after that? And then once they started looking at this, they found that project was going to be significantly impacted price-wise because of all the other added things that we had to do because of ADA compliance and
So the
electrical
project
codes.
didn't
and
continue, so
Did
the,
not
so the
continue.
funding for
Correct?
that is still
Yeah, that's,
available.
so where we are with that, we worked with Jerry Hopcroft over the summer. We're gonna be at some point bringing conceptually the project back to the Board of Selectmen and see where they wanna go. There's no way we can do that work without actually doing a major renovation of Town Hall, and the building needs it, but that $900,000 appropriation, we're looking at a $15 or $20 million renovation. Again, it's like an onion. Every time you try to fix one small thing, you got to fix everything else down the road. And the elevator we can fix is in a snapshot, and we have to maintain the ADA compliance with the building. But the rest of that project, if we start trying to remodel offices beyond doing anything cosmetic, you're going to start tearing everything up in the building, and it's just, you can put new electric in this room, and then it's connected to wires that are 90 years old. And same thing with the plumbing, we can replace a toilet, but if you're trying to actually fix a problem, we have to be careful with this building. It needs a lot of work. I think at some point we'll be having that discussion, but that $900,000 project's not going to happen.
So, questions?
Yeah, that's it.
So, does the, that group, do they know that's being taken from the project, or it hasn't even been turned over to them?
So the project's at a halt because the process was to get some initial design done to see what the building need and some conceptual designs where we're going, and then stop there. I mean, those estimates are, again, north of $10 million, so you have a $900,000 appropriation, of which they've already spent, is it, what, maybe a quarter of it, Kathy?
About
About $200,000, so.
It's been encumbered, they haven't spent it, but it's been encumbered towards.
So they agree with this, that
Well,
we can
the-
take that? I mean, because
their
it's under
project's
their
not happening.
domain. Huh?
Not necessarily. So if the scope of their project is under the purview of the selectmen, and we had that issue about a year and a half ago where the selectmen stopped the project because it was sort of getting out of its scope. So now the project's not going to happen. I mean, they can want it to happen all they want. There's no $900,000 renovation that we can do of Town Hall. So the project is effectively dead. At some point, we may want to say, all right, well, the engineering's got us this far. Do we want to use some of that money to continue the design? But we're at a holding point because that's.
So all the money we spent right now is kind of useless?
No,
Well,
the
is
design work that's been done is worthwhile. We haven't designed a complete renovation of the building. It's just as we've gotten into it, we've said, whoa, this is, we're not looking at a $900,000 project. You want to get some of this done, you're looking at a $9 million project, or a waste of money where you're doing a third of a project. So it's the term I would use is I don't want to say it's dead because we're going to have to do something with this building at some point in time, but that project as conceptualized is to bed now.
I'd just be fearful we'd go and do this, spend all this money, and then we'd go ahead with the project, and they say, well, I'm sorry, that, you're gonna have to redo the elevator again.
No. That won't happen with the elevator. If it wasn't for ADA compliance, we wouldn't necessarily be doing the elevator. It's just very expensive to get the elevator done.
Kathy, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that the money that's been spent so far by the PBC was actually spent doing an analysis of the building and its HVAC system, electrical and plumbing. So they didn't just go out and start designing something. They said, let's look at the bones of this building, let's see where our problems are.
So that still will be valid information?
It will,
and all
yeah.
of
That's
that?
what's informed us to the.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
the building is the building. We have 90-year-old electrical in here, we'll
Okay.
probably updated most of it. But it wasn't money wasted. It was money well spent to give us a baseline to say, here's what your building is. What we decide to do with what we have or what we decide needs to be done, that would be at a later date, but
So
at
the
least we know.
permanent
what
building
we have.
committee has been notified that this is gonna happen?
I don't know if we've reached out to them and told them that we're cutting, we want to pull the money from here. We're desperately looking for a source because if we don't get the elevator done and it fails, we're going to have a serious ADA issue.
I have talked with one member of the building committee, and he totally agrees that it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And we appropriated the
But they
money.
haven't voted.
They haven't.
Well-
And they haven't,
Well,
and the,
Sorry.
go ahead,
No, my mistake. Go ahead.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, it really doesn't matter, whether they, in my view, whether they vote one way or the other, because, it's money which, you can't build what you wanna build for the $700-some-odd-thousand that's remaining in the project. At some point, if you are gonna go ahead with the town hall project, you have to appropriate more money. We don't know what that is yet. If we decide not to go ahead with the town hall project, then that money simply won't be spent at all.
Yeah,
So,
we're not talking about a marginal difference in
Right.
money here. It's the
Yeah.
project's dead.
Right.
It's-
Okay.
You're talking
If I could, the-
30-fold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
I guess I-
elevator was originally
Bernie, go.
appropriated.
I'm sorry, what?
The elevator was originally approved as part of the capital plan 2+ years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
And we
Yep.
held it because the following year, the renovation
The
money
renovation
came,
was supposed to
and we
happen.
thought we would try to wrap them together, that it made some sense. But one of the reasons we had sought money for the elevator, Mrs. Connie had pointed out that we were beginning to have problems with its reliability, that the controls, that the systems had to be updated. And I think we've reached the point where we're afraid that if we don't take this action, we may suddenly find ourselves without the service of an elevator. The only sizable source of funding at this point in time happens to be the municipal modernization project. And as I said, I've talked with one member of the committee who was deeply involved in that project, and he agrees that because of the status now that we're not going forward, that it makes sense. The elevator project the cost has escalated, part of it's inflation, part of it's the fact that codes have been updated, have changed on us. We've got to get that work done.
I don't think it's a
Okay.
question of whether it's needed.
Right.
And we have an actual bid. Mrs. Connie is taking bids.
We took sub bids today on the elevator. That was the only filed sub trade. It came in at 213,000 was the lowest bid, and that has some subtract alternates, so the price might be lower depending on if we decide to knock out a sump pump and knock out doing some work to the cab itself. So that might be lower, and then we're taking general bids next Thursday. So we'll have a hard figure that's put in as a bid. We've already encumbered money for the design and for construction management, so that's already taken out. So the money.
And where is that money taken out from?
That was taken out of the same. We had the $140,000 that was originally appropriated for this. 40,000 I had estimated for the design services and construction management. 103 was a price we had gotten from our current elevator company. We asked them to come in, do an evaluation, and tell us what it would cost to do the upgrades we wanted to do. However, they didn't look at the ADA bit of it, and it was totally off the wall. So the design work of it is already encumbered. We have roughly 100 and.
Is it encumbered under which account?
Under the same
Under
account,
the
no.
under the account
Under
that
the elevator account.
under the elevator
Yes,
account.
right.
Okay.
So
Good.
there's a balance of about $100,000 or so that's in the elevator account. And then our estimate was about $300,000 because of all the ADA work that has to happen. Also looking at, we fit this elevator into the town hall. The PBC back in 1986 figured this was the only place we could put it, so we put it there. So we have an elevator room that's in a location that is farther away than what it usually is for a building. We've had to make do with what we had when we built this in. So there's additional cost now to bring it up to the code, and we have to bring it up to code because as soon as you touch any of the control works, according to the building code, I guess, you have to do all ADA.
Yep.
So we're looking at, we had our designer take a look and say, okay, what do we absolutely have to do in accordance with ADA? What would we like to do? That's what the deduct alternates are, is what we'd like to do, and then we'll see what the bids come in. And like I said, we have roughly $70,000 we may be able to reduce the price by if we don't do what the alternates were.
So if we extrapolate off what Bernie said, the conscious decision was made in 2017 to actually combine these into one project. So why can't we just consider it part of that project that was approved?
It effectively is.
So
I mean,
you know what I mean? We combined it, so
Yeah.
it's the same project. We're just taking the money for that part of the project out of the project fund.
right. In a perfect world,
Right?
Well,
Wait,
that I think that'd be a little tough to do. I think it would be difficult to take money from the town hall renovation. I mean, you'd have to look at, the specifics of the warrant and the specifics of
We already had
of
town
the
council.
motion.
Town council's already approved it. I mean, remember, when you guys get the warrant, it's already, any borrowing articles, bond council approves automatically. And anything else in here, town council's already approved it for its legality.
Right, but what my point is that, again, you have to look specifically at the language of the article and the motion to determine whether you could simply take money from one article and spend it on another.
Without
okay?
town meeting's approval.
Without town meeting's approval.
I'm saying town meeting's approval. No,
Right,
yeah.
right. I mean, town meeting, when you have town meeting's approval, that's a whole different ballgame. If I can ask Mrs. Connie one question, the PBCC has spent a certain amount of, preliminary design work and, a review of the building. Do they have any outstanding invoices remaining that you know of any substantial amount?
Not as far as the OPM and the design work on the renovation.
Okay, so basically, if they have $900,000 available initially and they spent 200 some odd thousand, you know, they should have there's $700,000 available. And my point is that there's no outstanding invoice or lien on that money which would
No.
prevent it from being used for
No,
something
we
else.
would not be affecting any of our obligations if we turned around and said $200,000 of this
Okay.
would go towards the elevator.
Okay.
Nobody else would suffer.
Okay,
I
Judy?
have one thing. I don't think the issue is should it or should it not be done. It should be. And of course, the funding situation. But I'm hearing maybe a lack of communication with the PBCC here. They didn't know
very
this was
definitely.
being done. And out of respect for them, because they're the ones by charter that has a certain responsibility, they should have been brought into the discussion.
Bernie's discussed it with them, and Kathy, you brought it up with them at their meetings, right?
No, I
Did you?
haven't, I have
Oh,
not
you-
been in discussion.
Yeah, that's what I
I'll
thought I
talk to the
heard.
committee afterwards.
Huh?
I'll talk to you after
When? Today?
the meeting.
Today. So, that's where I'm coming from, communication.
What I, yes, what I was thinking is that our norm has always been that the permanent building committee closes out the account and sort of releases it. And so I would feel comfortable if the permanent building committee did that and notified you folks that they were in agreement and they closed that account and it was okay with them for you to borrow one.
Well, so let me ask two questions.
Or
One,
to use
let's
that
say
borrow.
they don't have time to do that between now and town meeting, or they chose they not to. Does the finance commission have a recommendation of where we pull the money from? Because the concern we're facing.
I think there's $509,000 coming in.
Yeah, I mean, if the override stabilization fund, I don't know if I'd want to reappropriate money from the schools that's going to help the school district down the road just to fix the elevator. In a perfect world, we'd wait a couple of years until we did a full renovation of the building, and that's what we're looking at, is if we had to do it. Problem is that elevator's not going to last. So the longer we continue to delay this without an appropriation.
Well, we could do another special, and we certainly have other things that we could be discussing on another special later in the fall, and have gotten our free cash, and we would know where we were standing.
would
Before we
say-
go there, can I ask one question, Mr.
Sure.
Zuba? I did not mean to interrupt you.
No,
I'm
go
very
ahead.
sorry.
That's right, I interrupt people all the time.
Okay,
I don't mind
cool.
when people do it to me.
So I won't apologize to you anymore. Okay. What's the risk? Let's do a racy here. What's the risk if we do not fix this elevator right now and get it approved by town meeting? What is the ultimate risk to the town? What will that cost the town?
3/4 of this building are not ADA accessible, so we have to make the best effort we can to try to meet people's needs by having staff come downstairs and meet with people down here. On a short-term basis, you can do it, but this is not a very ADA compliant building. You can walk in the ground floor, and then it stairs to what we call this floor, and then a lot of the other citizen needs. Most people accessing the building go to the clerk's office or the assessor's office, and then the treasurer's office. So it's just about what kind of service we're providing to our citizens. You know, if we haven't made a good faith effort to repair something, could we face a lawsuit because we're not ADA compliant? Sure, it's possible. Things break, so if somebody were to come in and said, hey, your elevator broke on Monday, look, it's Tuesday, but we're worried about a critical failure on this elevator at some point. I don't know if anyone's been in it lately. It's a critical system of the building, and we're looking at a critical failure. You can't access the core functions that the public access this building for without that elevator.
So
And-
today is the
and-
19th, right, of September, right?
Right, I mean, yeah.
We got time.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, in all due respect to the PBCC, you know, this isn't their money to decide what to do with, okay? They were given a certain amount of money for a project. Well, that project can't be constructed. We know under any circumstances that if this project, the town hall renovation project, is gonna be built, we need more money. The project right now is in limbo. Everybody has agreed to that. The next decision will be reached is whether you continue with any project at all, or whether you continue with a project of a much larger scope. The money that we have now, the remaining money, isn't being used. We know that. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, we don't need the PBCC's approval to do this because there's no project to close out. In the past, when there's been additional money in a project, would we like to spend for something else, we've always asked the PBCC, have you completed all your construction contracts? Have you closed out the project? Do you need any additional money, or can we take what's there? And, you know, if the project is closed out, they've told us that, and they've told us how much money, additional money is available. That isn't necessary right now because we don't have a project to close out because there's no project, and as Mrs. Connie noted, that there's no outstanding invoices remaining on the remaining money, so we have approximately $700,000, which is just sitting there.
But yet we've ignored the PBC and didn't communicate with them, and, I mean, that's where I'm coming
But-
from. I don't,
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Sure.
We've made an
Yeah.
attempt. I talked with one member. I'll talk to you afterwards.
okay.
So the PBCC is meeting, I believe, next week.
Well, so we can do it. No
We're not
problem.
trying to ignore them by any means.
Yes, okay.
This happens to be the only sizable, because we have no free cash. These
Right.
balances are the only
Right.
source of
But as long as we
funds.
follow protocol, the, you know,
Yeah, we're not
the communication, and then we get notified, that's fine.
To Bernie's point,
We're
this
not-
is the only source of funds available, so it's not like
Yeah,
we just
I
said,
have no
let's
problem
pick
with the
that.
source
There's
of
no other
funds.
200 grand.
I
We're
have
not
no
trying-
problem with it.
We're
It's
not
the
trying to
process.
make it look like
One-
we're
Sorry,
doing
cut
their
it
job.
out.
No, don't, Bob, you haven't spoken.
I think I understand the issue regarding the PBBC, but I'm struggling with why wouldn't we address the issue this evening from a funding standpoint? If we have an elevator that is in the shape that it is, and we are not ADA compliant, to Alan's point, the PBBC has no money, has no project to spend this money on. I don't see why we wouldn't just settle this issue tonight from a funding standpoint, vote it in. If that means that an explanation is offered to PBBC, I'm sure Tony and Bernie can handle that. But it is
Thinking about the
a little late in
people,
the game, I think, to postpone it another, if that's what you're proposing.
No, not necessarily. I just, you know, I wanted to make sure that, that the process that we've had in place, it has worked over the years. And as far as notifying the PVCC that what we're doing and why, I want to make sure that that is followed. I think that's a good process. Also, Mr. Good, are there, now I just read Article 11, to see what sum of money the town will vote to transfer from available funds and appropriate for repairs to the elevator in order municipal building or to take any action in the matter. That's kind of a vague article. And so is there anything in place, because this is money that we have borrowed for a very specific thing, is there any kind of rules under DOR that you can think of that we would be stepping on by doing this?
No, as long as the project is considered complete, then those funds, any remaining funds, can be used, voted by town meeting to
Okay.
be used by another
So,
project.
As long as
so
they have
this,
contracted for the funds is really what it is. So if we had a contract out there, so if we issued a contract for $1 million worth of work and, you know, you're a third into it, and then we said, well, let's pull $200,000 from that to do a project, you can't do that. You've already appropriated that money.
Okay.
So Mark's right, as long as it's complete, as long as we haven't allocated those funds, we haven't. We've said it's $900,000. We haven't signed a contract with anyone for $900,000.
okay, okay. And then, so even though, okay, we have a project, it's not complete, but hasn't been started. And so is that the difference in the terminology here that we are sort of missing? So how do we
DOR doesn't-
identify that this has gone away? We borrowed, and how many?
It's ultimately up for town meeting to vote what to do with a borrowing authorization. So there'll be some money left at some point. The selectmen and the PBCC will have to sit down and say, do we want to try to propose using that for further design to a much larger project? Or at some point you're done and you close the project out, and by closing it out means you've decided you're no longer spending that money, you're not encumbered to spend any of that remaining money, and then it's up to town meeting. It's usually supposed to go to pay other debt service, but it's a little bit of a unique situation because we had a authorization that we've spent some of, but we're not spending the rest of. So one way to think about it is, it's a project where we borrowed $900,000 and it came in at $200,000. Sounds great, right?
So right now, we still owe on that 900,000 because we borrowed it, and we're paying interest on that 900,000.
Not necessarily, because when you do a borrowing like that, you don't always borrow right at once. I don't know the particular bond, but usually you're borrowing it in a few pieces.
Mark, what about it?
Tell me.
We did borrow the 900,000.
We did borrow the 900,000? Because there was an urgency to get this particular project done.
And when was it borrowed? When was it borrowed?
That was borrowed in
2007.
2018.
All right, so is
So
that-
we are paying interest on it.
So we're paying for something that we're really not using, so if we take $200,000 off of that and apply it to this project, then that's $200,000 less of associated interest that we're gonna be paying every year.
Well, no, because we've borrowed it, so we borrowed 900,000 for 20 years, so.
Okay.
So there's no
You're just getting
way to
expected-
take.
You're getting the expected
I
value
get
out of
you.
the project. out of it.
Understood, okay.
Can
You're
I
right.
can I say one thing? So I respect process. I'm project manager and we are all about process and I love process and I respect where you're coming from. But at the end of the day, the feeling of what our position is to represent our customers, which are the taxpayers of the town. Right now we have 700,000 sitting in an account that's not doing anything. And we're gonna take money that could extend an override for 2 to 3 years out because of red tape here that we can't get this money released. That seems a little foolish to me.
Well, that has nothing to do with the
Well, Anne brought up taking it out of the 500,000 for
Oh,
the
yeah.
override. So to me, that seems foolish. That
I
seems
was-
pound-wise
I
and
was-
penny foolish.
I
She was kidding.
I know. I'm saying, I think
No.
the money's sitting there, it's idle. We're paying interest on it. We're paying for it. This repair needs to be done. It is part of the town hall. Just authorize the money to be transferred and then talk to the board that does the planning to let them know the decision.
Okay. Anybody
And
else?
in the future, we'll have the PBC involved in that decision, and it won't be a surprise to them.
That's a great comment. That's a great feedback.
Anything else? No?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you on that one. Kathy, is this the last one that you're involved in here?
Yes, it is for any of the money items.
Okay, thank you. All right. Where are we? What number are we on?
We have to do 9.
Number 12?
We have to do 9, bring it.
I buried-
We took it out of the.
I'm just finding information here.
Thanks,
Thank
Kathy. We'll
you.
see you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
All right, so we're on number 9. Water main
Article
improvement.
9?
Article 9.
Even though we just did number 11, okay.
Yep, we took it out of context.
Okay.
Water main improvements for Sumner Winter Streets area.
So this would be a borrowing authorization to do about $1.5 million worth of design and water lining work in that particular part of town. The reason we would be doing so is we've been working with the town of Sharon really on and off for 7 or 8 years for them to make an emergency connection to our water system. So that way in an emergency, if their tanks went down or if they went down for maintenance, they'd be able to connect to our water supply. In order for that to happen, we need to strengthen the lines in that area to make sure that we don't have any flow issues and to make sure that we actually have the ability to do it. So I think as I state in the yellow sheets, while we like to be neighborly and we'd love to help Sharon out, we're not exactly going to pay any money to do it. So the $1 million+ worth of work to reline that section of town, Sharon is actually going to pay for. And
But
they
we're gonna borrow it.
Correct. Sharon pays for it. They pay for the pump station, the connection. The pump station is actually going to be over the line in Sharon. So the benefit to us is twofold. One, we get $1.5 million worth of infrastructure work on Sharon's dime. And those are water lines we'd otherwise be lining. As you know, we've got a decades-long backlog of water lining. So it's good that we're getting $1.5 million worth of water lining for...
That's about 2 years worth of water line.
At the rate we're going, yeah. So it's substantial work. It's about 8% of our total backlog. So it doesn't sound huge, but it's still helpful. And to Alan's point, it's about 2 years of what we would do. We also, if they need to use the emergency connection, we would actually be selling them the water at a markup of the MWRA wholesale rate that we pay. So we're in a good situation. You know, earlier in the year, the Board of Selectmen had discussions over water rights and having ability and access to water. We're lucky that we're an MWRA customer. We have a virtually unlimited supply of water, and we can make this happen. So we're in a unique position. I don't want to say to take advantage of the town of Sharon. We're not doing that. It's a fair deal. They're okay with it. But to get $1.5 million worth of infrastructure work and potential revenue down the road. The reason we're borrowing the money is it is our work, and we want to maintain ownership of the infrastructure. If we looked at a more complicated arrangement where Sharon borrowed the money and did work on our town, not only is that more complicated, but technically they own it and they own the project. We wouldn't want them owning our infrastructure or infrastructure under our streets. So it's, sure, we'd love to help you, Sharon, just do all the work to make it happen. I think it's akin to your neighbor building you a deck because they want you to have a deck. I haven't quite thought of a neighbor relationship here. I don't know what you would do for your neighbor.
But I've seen it, happen that other way, Tony. Quite frankly, I would just as soon prefer that if the work is being done on Norwood property, that it be done under the auspices of Norwood, who have control over the project, the approval of the project, to make sure that it's done in accordance with the plans and specifications.
Absolutely. I wouldn't want to just design it and hand it off to somebody else and somebody else is doing the bidding. It would be, given the scope of it,
right.
It would be too messy to let somebody else.
It'd be like the TV commercial, that's just okay.
Yeah.
How do they recompensate us? Do they just backdoor us the money or whatever?
Well,
go in a back alley and hand you a bunch of cash? Like, how does this work?
I know we're getting a really good interest rate on that. From them.
So I mean, they pay 100% of the cost. What we do with Sharon is we enter into what's known as an IMA or an intermunicipal agreement, whereby we agree to borrow X dollars and they agree to pay for it. They're just going to raise, the same way we would do it, they're going to raise it in their sewer rates, and they're going to cut us a check every year for whatever that borrowing amount is, $120,000. And the benefit of IMA is it's an actual state instrument where the DOR sort of blesses IMAs. So we're basically signing a contract with Sharon, but by doing it as an IMA, which is how water and sewer connections work, if for some reason they ever were to not pay us, the DOR is able to step in and force them to pay us. I don't think that would happen. The DOR would never let you not just pay your bills, but we actually put it in writing, and the article is actually written to be, or at least in the L sheet, it's of course contingent on Sharon paying the full cost, which they've already agreed to do. It just needs to get reduced to writing, but it's a great deal for us because we have a great product to sell. If situations were reversed, if we were Sharon with our $10,000 tax rate, paying $1.5 million for an emergency water connection plus the cost of the water, it's a pretty good deal. I'd pay it if we could get another emergency connection, I'd pay $1.5 million to do it. Will the connection work both ways? If we want it to, it will. I would only want to do that in a true emergency. As everyone knows, sometimes when you intersect different water systems into water pipes, it can cause problems. That's actually what happened in Flint. So I think we would only be looking at that if we had a legitimate emergency, which is very unlikely to happen for us. Because they have private wells in Sharon, or they have a well system, the likelihood of well contamination is much higher than an issue at the MWRA. And we don't shut down the Quabbin for maintenance per se. The plants and everything else get shut down, but they may have to shut down their wells for maintenance. So we're just in a much better, stable position.
So Mark, from a treasurer's point of view, this is a very clean way to do it?
I think it is. I was just sitting here thinking that we want to make sure we get our issuance costs down too as well, I would think.
Oh,
In some ways, this is not, it's different, but in many ways, it's like the agreement we had with NSTAR.
Right, I was thinking that,
Right,
yes.
electrical
Right, we
connection.
did that too. I was
They pay
thinking
all the
that.
costs, even though we constructed it, and we borrowed the money. They
So
paid all
when
the
they
costs.
pay us, where does that money go? Back into the general fund?
No, it goes right to the debt service payment.
Okay, all right, okay.
So, just out of curiosity, and Bernie, you might be able to address this. I'm assuming that this is a much better arrangement for them than applying to MWRA to be an emergency water provider.
Well,
So in other words, be like Dedham Westwood, and
I thought, personally, I think it makes a lot more sense for Sharon to become a partial member of the
right.
MWRA system.
Yeah.
If they don't want to, they want to be, they need an emergency backup. They've apparently looked at some other alternatives, and this is by far the most economical and the most feasible one for them. Some of the neighbors don't have stable water supplies either.
Right.
So any other neighbors we can do this with?
We were talking with Walpole, and it's funny, some towns just, we're like an MWRA community through and through. Some towns just don't want to do, nothing to do with the MWRA. I grew up in Randolph where they're looking at a $22 million water treatment plant, and they have terrible water and a terrible lining system, and they still think the MWRA is the devil. But if you look at their problems versus ours, it's nuts. I think, so Walpole, we started talking with them, and at one point they said, nope, everyone wanted nothing to do with the MWRA. Sharon is, I think, taking that metered approach of, well, let's do an emergency connection because it makes sense to do it with Norwood. To your point, do I think down the road would they, and the MWRA approves the emergency connection as well, so it's not just like a backdoor deal where we're like plugging Sharon into our water system and not telling the MWRA.
Right,
To your point, if they eventually wanted to become a partial member for just water, the more members in the MWRA, the better. And maybe this is an easier sell for communities to say, okay, well, we did an emergency thing, it worked, we needed to use it for 6 months, 1 year, and we had no problems with it. Maybe they'd feel more comfortable doing it down the road, because the more MWRA members, the better. We've got this rare asset.
Stoughton has an MWRA free, connection, don't they?
Their
They
community.
do now.
Stoughton.
Yes.
And there's
Logistics?
sewer, I'm not sure, their water now?
Yes, they joined, they were desperate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
with
they had some
our-
real problems.
With our pipelining, the logistics, well, how is this going to work? Do we have to get another company in here, or is that company going to work twice as hard because they're still doing our lining for
No,
our pipes?
We would just, so when we're ready, we'd be looking at next spring sometime possibly, we're just gonna put out a bid for more water lining work. So in a typical year, we're doing that. Last year we did an additional borrowing, so instead of putting out a bid for $1 million worth of lining, we put out a bid for $2.5 million worth of lining. And a company that's able to do it is able to bid on it. So it's I wouldn't want to necessarily do $10 million worth of water lining in a given year, just because from the DPW standpoint, that becomes a lot of project management. I'm sure if we made that money available, they'd say, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's like road work. If we got another $1 million for road work, you just increase the bid and say, well, now we need $3 million worth of road work.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be
So
an
we won't have two different companies doing it, or
well, the
we
bid
won't,
might
you
go
know.
separately, in a sense, for this project, where it might be a separate company that actually does it, but we would still be managing it. Again, it would go. I don't know if it would go out to bid in conjunction with our regular water lining, or we would have this is this particular part of town and this is that particular part of town. But you might get one contractor bidding on both.
It's been done both ways.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes if you have one big contract, you may be able to get a better price, because you'll have less of a mobilization cost.
Yeah.
Water lining is pretty much a commodity, right? I assume it's a commodity. Company
Yeah.
A and Company B do
How much
basically the same
lining?
thing, right?
Yeah, how much lining do you want is what they're going to say.
Okay.
And okay, you know, you're a good customer at $1 million worth of lining, and there's companies out there who can only handle maybe small projects, and then you may get a bigger company because they're saying, all right, you're doing 2 miles of line or 10 miles of line. Same thing with roads. There's, you know, if we were putting out a bid for, you know, $10-12 million worth of road, the contractors we're getting now probably can't do $12 million worth of road work in one project. They can do $1.5 million over 30 roads.
Okay, any other questions? All right, let's move on. Thank you. All right, we did 11.
There's no money associated with the cemetery, right?
No, but it would be worth a brief discussion at least.
Okay.
We could have future.
You can talk fast for this one.
Okay, we'll talk fast on this one. So,
Did Judy say it was okay?
No, because the audience.
The audience won't be able to.
I will
They can
talk.
pause the button, Judy, and reflect on what
Slow
you
motion,
said.
slow motion.
Or they could hit the move too, if
I
they'd
will,
like to
I will
do
talk
that.
in the middle. Several years ago, the town was approached to acquire the East Walpole Cemetery, which is partially in Norwood and partially in Walpole. There was, I think, 27 or 8 acres of land, and they wanted $1 million or $1.5 million for it, and the town said, no, we're not really interested. They came back with a smaller portion, an offer price of $400,000, and the response then was, you know, we're really not interested in buying a cemetery. It's a small nonprofit cemetery association. There's no other cemeteries there. They have no assets, so they are looking to divest themselves of it. And what they finally come up with and approach the town with is we would take about 14 acres of land, roughly 13 in Norwood and 1 in Walpole, which is the cemetery and some additional land that may be buildable, but for all intents and purposes probably isn't. They would split it. Their other lot they would go and sell off and do whatever it is they would want with it. We would absorb the cost of maintaining the cemetery, so it's estimated between $7,000 and $10,000 a year. They'll tell you 5. I like to use more realistic numbers, so it would be a contract operation just like it has been before. The benefits to us, because that's the first question, is okay, that sounds good. Why are we taking a cemetery? There's a couple. One, I guess you could say you get excess cemetery capacity, but I don't think we'll ever actually need it. The land total will add to our exempt property numbers under 40B. So that's a little over 13 acres that now gets added to our 40B numbers, which really gives us a good sort of breather. The other advantage is they've offered to donate to the town, through a private donation really, about $150,000 to be used for the long-term care of the cemetery. We wouldn't set it up in our traditional perpetual care account where it's interest only. It would be set up for perpetual care of the cemetery, but possibly capital projects we may need down there.
They still have active burials
Down the
there?
road. They do, not too many. We would allow active burials, the same price structures we have at at Highland Cemetery. You know, it's in reasonably good condition if you look at it. It's not quite Norwood's standard, but you know, give us a couple years and we'll get it up to what we usually maintain. So we'd get some money, so if down the road we gotta pave the road that's there or fix the fence that's in the front. There's a possibility of doing some walking trails or something in the back, but it's kind of ledge, and I don't know if we get into that yet. It is a historic cemetery. It does have a some long-time historic, and this is all in your yellow sheets. Norwood families were instrumental in getting it up and running in the 1830s. The Historic Commission has reviewed the plan and enthusiastically endorsed it. It is us being somewhat proactive in historic preservation and saying before this sort of falls apart and becomes a burden, let's take a look at it.
But
let's
it's
see if we-
open to anybody to be buried there?
Once we take it, it will be. Right now, I would assume it is. It's mostly, originally it was Bird family members, members of the Bird family, and their sort of descendants, but once we take it over, it would be just our normal cemetery rules. I don't want to say open to
Okay,
anyone.
Do we need any legislative action since we're acquiring a piece of property in another community?
No, because the core parcel is it's actually being donated, and then the core parcel is in, it's in Norwood. So the portion of the land that we're taking in Walpole is de minimis. If we had bought the whole property, we'd probably need to, because there's there's some acreage in Walpole, but what we're doing is just the end of a lot line. It's just like when we sign water and sewer agreements with another town, you're not going to the legislature for that. It's not really a property acquisition per se.
Okay.
If we bought a pond in another town, that would be a legislative action.
All
So.
right. Okay, all right, so, any other questions on this?
Nope.
Comments? No? Okay. Down to the fire equipment, $85,000.
Similar to the town hall project, we want to complete the fit out of our recently purchased engine. We'd appropriated $650,000 for the engine. The final price came in at $644,000 without the equipment. About 50% of the equipment cost is the Jaws of Life for the truck. And that's not uncommon for Jaws of Life. They're particularly expensive, but the engine we're cycling out, the set of Jaws that are on it, are more than 10 years old. So that's one thing to have it sort of as your back of the pocket backup engine because something's down, but a frontline engine responding without Jaws and the other necessary equipment is challenging. We had hoped, and Chief Greeley had hoped, that the initial appropriation would encompass enough of everything that he'd be able to at least get the Jaws and maybe nickel and dime everything else, but a combination of steel prices going up and really taking a step back and saying, what do we need for equipment on the truck? And this happens, unfortunately, quite a bit, has caused the price to go up. We are changing our capital process with vehicle purchases to now make sure that we have departments. What people do is they try to go to the FinCom and town meeting and say, I just need $40,000 for a vehicle, because they don't want to tell you it's really going to be $60,000 with everything in it. But we're moving to the sort of all-in model, and I don't want to say all-in as in equipment we don't need, but if you think of a police cruiser, there's the cost of the cruiser, and then there's thousands of dollars of equipment that go into it. I would rather always bring forward the amount of the total cost of everything for it, equipment all included, the lettering, the lining, the sirens, the lights, etc. So we know this is the whole cost of actually doing it, not just get the cost of the bare project and try to make it work some other way.
So there's a number of places the money's being taken from?
Yeah, a number of smaller
Or
accounts.
suggested. And all these people who have budget responsibility has agreed?
Yep. Some of these are if you have the list, I can tell you that some of them are
Because the
closed out
schools
projects.
have got 1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh,
5,
so these are
6.
these are closed out projects. That's why you see all the little amounts here, and none of them are very big. So these are projects that are done that we can reauthorize.
And we've been notified that these are closed?
Yes.
Okay. And the school departments don't have any problem giving the money back over to
No,
general
because these
government?
projects are done. It's just a borrowing authorization.
Use it for anything.
Yeah, that's the other thing too.
Okay.
I know Paul Acadi has, use sometimes and they move project
They
money.
can't move
over.
this money around.
Oh, they
though.
can't?
Yeah, this is borrowing money.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is what you borrowed $100,000 to do windows, and the project came in finally done at $96,200. It's taking what's left. So these are monies that can't get used for anything else
Okay.
other than a borrowing.
We
some other
did
kind.
take money, was it last year or the year before, for that move to the Willett,
Yes.
from the Willett to the
And he
Savage
took it from
Building,
existing
and we
stuff.
took it from a list like this, and I think some of it was some other school money.
Yeah.
And that's where they got it, so that it wasn't a burden on the general government at the time.
Where does this money sit in the budget actually, now that you've mentioned it? So this is project money that's not allocated. Is it money that's not in our operating budget?
No, it's money for a project we've already borrowed. So in a given year where we say we're borrowing $100,000 for something and then we go get the project
Capital
done,
stuff.
that money is sort of
It's separate, it's.
exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it,
This
got it,
isn't
got it,
this
got
is
it.
an operating.
It's not,
budget.
it's not OPEX,
Yeah,
it's
this
CapEx,
is all
got it,
all,
got it, got it, got it.
all borrowing. So
Yeah,
and
got it, got it,
specifically,
got it.
it's all borrowing. So that's a little different than, I mean, if we buy a police, bad example, we buy a fire engine with $500,000 of cash. You open a capital project account for $500,000, and if it comes in at $490,000 and it's purchased, if it's cash, that's usually closed at the end of the year to free cash because you didn't spend it, it's done. Borrowings stay until they're reauthorized.
Okay, got it. I missed the distinction between CapEx
Not
and
a problem.
OPEX. Got it.
Any questions on this? Okay, we'll go to the next one. 85,000. Tony, transportation-related purposes, what is this?
This is
appropriation
our,
transfer?
every year we receive a small amount of money through a state tax on rideshare services like Uber and Lyft. Last year we did bike racks, this year we're looking to do bike racks again. We can't accumulate the money year to year and it has to be used for transportation-related purposes. It's supposed to focus on alternative transportation methods. Love to pave a road with it, but the $14,000 allocation won't get us too far. So this year we're looking at bike racks, and this will probably be the last year we do bike racks because I don't know if I can fit any more after this. But 4 or 5 of the schools have requested bike racks. We're going to accommodate that. We're
Is the
going to
school
look.
committee aware of that?
Yeah, we worked with
Okay.
Dr. Thompson and Paul Riccardi to figure out which schools actually wanted them. 4 or 5 of the schools. We're going to look at some of the sidewalk racks near the train stations and downtown, as well as I believe 1 or 2 at the senior center. What we're thinking next year, if the dollar amount is in the same amount, we might look at doing sort of a pilot program or funding part of a program to add a part-time senior driver and have them see if they can do a sedan as opposed to a van. So we've been working that out. This might be a good way to test a project like that. We're not quite ready to do it yet, but that's what we're thinking next year because I don't know if we could do bike racks again next year. As much as I'd like to, we might be bike racked out. We've thought about in the future, could we use it for sort of trail construction? The problem then being you're not getting much of a trail for that.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Where else? Unpaid bills, do we have any?
As of right now, I think it's none.
At the moment, none.
Good.
Yay,
Could change
Awesome.
tomorrow, but at the moment, none.
Fantastic.
you're doing such a good job on that.
It's amazing sometimes.
Okay,
Right.
I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Now, where are we on our list of things to do?
Do you want to vote on these? or wait
Yeah,
until later?
well, why don't we wait till later? We'll just let these folks go home.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, everybody, and I think, let's see, airport finances.
Yeah, Bob wanted that, right?
Bob, and, we did get, and maybe Alan, you can help me on this.
Okay, sure.
We did get information from David Ajar or someone about the, facilities, townwide facilities.
Well, they'll be having a meeting
So-
on
We
the
did.
26th, right?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
there was some questions that Maev had in particular, and David responded to them and in a memorandum form, which
Okay,
is what we have.
do you know who submitted this to us for our agenda?
Other
Looks like
than,
Dave-
other than I
looks
think
like
it was
David
just
did.
information.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's on vacation, so if we need to
Okay, so we can,
put him on the
we
agenda the
can,
next time.
postpone this?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's just information.
All right, okay, we can file it for information then. All right, now, where are we? Bob, you wanted to talk a little bit about the
Well,
airport, and then do
Very
another-
briefly, we'll just wrap up with just early observations, then we'll follow up next meeting with the usual report I've done. So the one thing I just wanted to note about the summary you have before you, from a revenue perspective, the airport is pretty much even keeled to what it was last year, and I just wanted to make sure we were all aware that one of the things that helped bump the revenue line up a little bit was our suggestion for the landing fee, which the airport initiated, started collecting that fee in August of last year. So based on 11 months worth of data, that fee generated 23,000, almost 23,500. And that's, I think, a good thing. I'm very glad the airport did that. So when I come back next meeting, we will have the regular analysis I've done the last couple of years, which is just basically trending information that appears for revenue and expenses over this period of time, FY13 to 19. Normally what I've done also is do a second scenario, which basically is an exercise that takes out the information, expense and revenue information that's associated with FEMA or snow removal and the matching grants. Those are areas where we don't have direct control over those things, and that analysis gives you a pretty good perspective in terms of our revenue and expense trend, our net profit trend. The third analysis that I'll come back with is just considering this analysis that you see here before you, the information that you see here before you, with some consideration of some additional monies being, expenses being added to the analysis to not, it's basically a what if analysis. What if this was considered more of an enterprise fund? It won't be a pure enterprise fund analysis, but we'll also take in from an expense standpoint, what would the revenue and trend lines be if it wasn't a revenue, if it was an enterprise fund, where part of the expenses associated with the airport would be considered the services that the town provides the airport, and so forth and so on. So, but the big items, I think, in FY19, just take away tonight, is that we are, actually up $10,000 in direct revenue. I attribute the landing fee as being a positive in that regard. Expenses are up from last year. However, I would just make note that when you see the analysis next meeting, this was a big year for the airport in terms of matching grant costs. There was about $86,000 worth of matching grants. That's the biggest number we've seen in 7 or 8 years. Mm-hmm. Normally, we're seeing matching grants contributions from the town being more in the $15,000 to $20,000 range, and just that's actually good that we're spending $86,000 for matching grants, because that's only representing a 5% share of the capital projects that the airport is initiating with DOT and FAA. So that's the short story. Next meeting, I hope to have these. I did draft them, so we'll come back next time with the little charts that just rapidly show.
Well, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So the one thing I don't see in here, so I see a lot of soft revenues in here, like what the excise taxes are from people that live in the town that work at the airport, right? So that's like a soft revenue number, an indirect revenue number. What I don't see in here for expenses is legal costs, because the airport is typically very high on legal costs. So are those not allocated to the airport so you can see what the actual profit of the airport is?
See, the third analysis that you'll see next time will be an estimate of what share of the legal fees the airport would have as a department. So this analysis is purely legal fees, insurance, those benefits are all part of the shared cost budget. Okay. And I do have a method, it's not great, but I do have a method of kind of accounting for those shared costs to be put into the expense line so that we have a picture of that.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right. Everybody? Thank you, Bob. All right. Onward. Facilities management report we took care of. All right. I guess we're down to other.
Other.
Let's shall we vote on the money articles first before we go into any sort of minutia that we have in front of us? Okay, we'll go down the list.
Looking for motions?
Yeah,
Do you want to do them separately, or can we do
Yeah.
them all together?
Yeah,
No.
we do them separate.
You have to do them separately?
Yeah. And let's go down the list. Okay. What's that?
She just made me laugh, sorry.
I don't know.
Article one?
I don't think that we ever laughed so much. Maybe it's the chair.
It's mine. It's mine. It's
Oh,
mine.
it's you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, Article 1?
Article 1. Who wants to?
That's the Moderna tax, TIF.
Do we need to
I
take, just
saying that we,
I make a motion
Would
that we recommend that to town meeting.
I'll
Okay.
second it. To make it easy, we can just do all of them if you'd like.
On the TIF, do we actually present at the town meeting, or is that from the Board of
No,
Selectmen?
that's from the.
So our vote is in support. of
It's
the-
in
support.
support, yes.
Yes.
okay. Article 2, the transfer of money from internal sources for the land acquisition of $10,000. Do I have a motion?
I'll
So-
make a, yeah,
So moved?
second.
Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. St. Street's acquisition, this would be a vote to support the acquisition by the CPA.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, that's using CPA funds?
That's
Mhm.
using
Okay.
CPA funds?
Okay,
And that is a
Um,
recommendation we make formally to town meeting.
yes.
Yes. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous? Alrighty, next one, school transfer of funds, 2020 budget to override state.
Which one are we on?
Article
Number
6.
6.
6, okay.
509,290 to the override stabilization fund. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Kelly and Alan, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Coakley Middle School Design Services, what's that one? That's to borrow 1.5 million.
I'll make the motion for Alan, since he's the chair.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Did we skip the senior tax work-off program?
Do we have to take a position on that?
Well, we haven't, well, let's take a vote on the,
Okay, sorry.
design services first,
Oh, sorry, I
please.
thought you.
Okay, and we have a Kelly and Judy and all, I have a vote on that, please.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor, all opposed?
Okay, that one's unanimous. Oh my heavens, we're doing really great today, aren't we? Okay, senior tax write-off tax
Technically, there is
work-off.
money involved there.
Yeah, and even though this particular, it's not a big deal at the end of the day, even though this particular statutory change doesn't change the dollar amount, it may increase availability, and we may at some point have a discussion. I think the selectmen are probably gonna look at raising the levels for that down the road. It comes out of the assessor's overlay.
Okay.
But it does have, to Judy's point, there's a small financial component to it.
I
Oh.
thought they were, I
think it's a great idea.
I thought they were going, okay, I thought they were going to postpone that and put it
No,
on the
we,
spring? Or the other one?
the other ones that got postponed were changes in the exemptions. What this is, it changes the senior, it doesn't change the senior tax work-off program. It allows somebody who is a senior that is homebound or disabled and physically unable to participate in the
somebody else
program
do it.
to have somebody do it for
That's
them and still receive the
That's
benefit.
All right,
Okay.
let me make a motion to support the revisions to the existing senior tax workout program,
I'll second it. Oh, poor Bob.
That's all right.
Bob?
to support that, yeah.
Okay, can I have a vote on that, please? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay, now we're down to the water main improvements, that's borrowing, right?
Mm-hmm.
1.5 million,
I'll make that motion.
okay,
I'll second it.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, okay. Acquisition on East Walpole Cemetery,
I'll make a motion to support the acquisition of the East Walpole Cemetery.
I'll second that.
okay. Anybody, any comments? I'm sorry,
No.
hadn't said that, but I figured
I
you'd
think
all
we've had plenty of comments.
You'd all jump in
All in favor?
anyway, all in
All in
favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, unanimous. Additional funds for the town hall elevator, $200,000 taken from internal sources. And the list is as we received it in our packet, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I think we've talked that one to death. I think the bottom line for me is the, good communication with the PBC.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Additional funds for the fire truck, my same comment, it is as is stated in this
packet. Um,
I'll make that motion.
And where was that
second it.
coming from?
That's
that
coming
those
from
multiple-
random
small,
projects.
All those random
small
projects
accounts.
that,
Who seconded this, Bob? Any discussion? No, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous? Transport company funds, what? Oh, that's the bike racks.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, do we have a
Make a
motion?
motion to use the $14,862 to be used for the purposes of additional bike racks in the town.
I'll second that, and I assume that's part of your motion, is that's coming from the Mass Transportation
Yes.
Infrastructure Fund?
Yep, funded by that.
Mhm.
Fantastic.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous. Town Meeting Rules Committee, we don't have to vote on. Unpaid bills, we
Don't have
have
any.
any. That's wonderful.
We get nothing.
What should we do for now, indefinite postponement, and we'll see what happens at town
Okay.
meeting?
You wanna make
Yeah.
a motion?
Motion for indefinite postponement?
Second.
Aye.
So we're all set with town meetings warrant. I will say that
We
myself,
didn't vote on this indefinite postponement?
oh, okay,
No.
let's do
Okay.
that. Then I want to add something.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All opposed? Unanimous.
Look at that.
I just want to say, just let people know that everything's fine, but I won't be there the night of town meeting. I will be out of town. So, anybody else out of town?
The chair will be out of town,
I-
so the vice chair will take over.
I think what should be noted is that you're out of town due to long-standing commitments, because typically we don't have special town meeting
Thank
until
you.
November.
Yes, very
Yeah.
definitely.
Which is
Yeah.
why the
Plans
two of you
made a
schedule.
year ahead.
Yeah, you
And by the
schedule
way, we're not
things you did.
together. We're on separate.
Okay, but you scheduled
Places
things a
have
long
been-
time, you schedule a long time in advance, assuming special town meeting
Yeah.
as it is every year is in November.
Yeah.
Right.
I heard you guys were going to Vegas together, but I guess that's not the
No.
I
truth.
think you gotta be on different continents.
We
You're not gonna be there, I'm gonna have to bring my
I
own snacks.
know.
One quick item, and
So
not for
hungry.
discussion, just for information, it's just an update we provided to the selectmen a few weeks ago on some of the capital outlay projects from
Okay.
Oh,
last
good.
year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mizuka.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, where are we on our list of things to do? All right,
Very good.
Great, this is great.
under other, I have a couple of things, meeting dates. I would like to suggest that we, try to stick with the third Thursday of the month for the next few months and see how that works for everybody.
Sure.
It does not, I checked, that's not Thanksgiving, it's not, any of the
Yeah.
Christmas holidays, so should we try for, October, November, and December?
So
And-
the third Thursday
Thursday.
of every month, unless there is no reason to meet, then we would
Then we
cancel.
would cancel it.
Sure, yeah, that's great. I like third Thursday of every month. Thursdays
So
are great
that
for
would
me.
be, next meeting would be October the 17th.
Yes,
Perfect.
okay?
Okay.
So in the minutes, maybe,
Oh, you're
could
paying for
put
1
in
second.
the actual dates of
Do you want
The
to-
December.
next 3 Thursdays.
I knew you were gonna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question, we had talked last year about having somebody come in and do a presentation on fiscal trend monitoring. We can still arrange
that's
that for
awesome.
sometime in the fall. Do you want that to fall at one of your regular meetings, or do you want a special meeting for it?
Well, how long do you think the presentation would be, just a general estimate?
John usually does an hour, hour and a half.
Oh.
I mean, what is, you may start having questions. It's-
He doesn't talk as fast as you, Tony, apparently.
No, I think he actually slows down a little bit. That's why. If I just took his notes and
15
gave
minutes.
done it in 10 minutes.
I mean,
these are the 15 things to look at. It's important we're done.
I'm sorry, what was the particular purpose? Judy didn't.
Plus the audience, too.
Fiscal trend monitoring. We talked about we've actually talked about a couple times in the last couple of years that when we're doing trend analyses and we're looking out, it's not so much our budget, because the operating portion of our budget is relatively stable. Our costs and our labor, but that only goes up and down when we add and delete bodies.
Yeah.
So really, there's a lot of fiscal trends out there, things like your new growth, things like different kinds of tax revenue, that those are really what you want to be looking at. Not that you don't look at your costs, of course, but there's
Right.
about 20 or 25 different fiscal indicators out there that you can look at. And every town needs to pick sort of the 10 or 15 that work for them. But there's a CFO and a manager in the state that does a great presentation. He's done it many times, John Coder, for the AFTC and for the Selectmen's Associations on fiscal trend monitoring. And Northborough, where he works, has one of the best fiscal trend monitoring systems out there. So we can arrange that. I just want to know if you want me to try to pick one of those Thursday dates, or do you want an off date?
Well, this is, you said, an hour and a half, okay? So if we have other appointments, either he's gonna be waiting or they're gonna be waiting, okay? Would it make sense to try to schedule this for October 17th? And the reason I say that is it's right after town meeting, so it's less likely we're gonna have anything pressing right then.
I suppose it would depend on his schedule.
Yeah, but if I have
Right,
the date, I
depending
can
on
reach
his
out to
schedule.
him and
Yeah.
see if I can.
Right.
I had asked Mark Good to check with our financial advisor and see if he could come in, and I kind of wanted to do that before we got together and finished the policies. So, and I suggested that October would be a good meeting for that, so I think that maybe
And how
might-
long would that be?
I don't know.
Probably about an hour and a half, too. Now we're talking 3 hours plus
Yeah, we don't
business.
wanna do that.
Well, it depends on what you want the financial advisor, what you really want to discuss with them. I mean, they're gonna.
We didn't go in depth yet about it. It was
Yeah.
just something I was thinking about.
I think we talked about that in July. I
Yes,
think
we
what
did.
we were just kind of looking for was sort of credit rating 101. You know, what are the key factors that formulate a municipality's credit rating, and just take us through the process and perhaps identify some of the strengths or some of the weaknesses that the town has. So just, I think both in the municipality and the light department, taking us through the 101 and just identifying for us as finance commissioners where are our strengths and what are the things we may need to pay attention to in order to ensure that we maintain our rating or be
Can we
really
grow it?
gung-ho going for the top rating. So I think it's mostly a learning and then just an education for us.
So I was figuring probably, I didn't think any more than an hour, but I don't think we want to sit through that and the other, so maybe,
Well, why don't we
maybe
see
the
what the
November.
availability is to
Yeah.
the person, and then can talk to Ann, our chair, and see if we could schedule something. If it has to be another night, it has to be another night. I mean,
Yeah.
these are-
Yeah.
This is time spent, well spent.
Sure. Are Thursdays generally good for the finance commission? Because that way.
That's what we just said.
Yeah.
Well, third Thursdays, but if it's a different Thursday, just so I can get John some dates and say, look, Thursdays kind
okay,
of work. Because
yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
usually boards don't meet on Thursdays.
Usually
Selectmen don't
don't
meet on
have-
Thursdays, but
I'm usually open on Thursdays.
okay.
Thursdays
I know you
are
got a
good
busy
for
day schedule.
Well, you know, it's
I don't
how
want
I
to hear.
plan my retirement.
All right, so I'll get a Thursday from him. If the 17th doesn't work, we'll see if we can find another.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
good. All right, and what is this gentleman's name?
John Coder.
John Coder?
Yep.
Spell?
Coderre.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for bringing that up again. Okay, so Bob, you're gonna do the airport report at our next meeting. Conflict of interest training, the training that we get through the state.
You mean the online training?
Online training, yes. And so apparently Molly, help me with her last name.
Hearn.
No, the other one.
Keen.
Keene.
The HR
I know it was
person.
K, and I was
Molly too.
Molly Keene. And I had gotten a notice at one point in time, and so realized that we didn't all have it done. And so I told her that I would mention it, and if you haven't done it within the last 2 years, you should do it now.
Well, have
Do I have an
somebody
email
send,
on that?
Huh?
Do I have an email on that? Because I haven't done it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest,
have
I haven't
some,
done it.
have somebody
I think
send us an
Ann's-
email with it.
Ann's-
I sent a link.
Sent a link.
I sent a link
Okay, I
a
do
couple
remember
of
that.
weeks ago.
Okay, my bad.
And so,
Get on that.
so if you have any questions on how long it's been since you've done it, then just contact Molly and she'll let you know.
Okay.
So let's get us all up to speed on that. And then,
Is
I'd
that
like
gonna be a
something-
townwide project too, to get
Yes.
everybody up
Yeah,
to
every
date?
2 years, everyone has to do it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You brought your certificate. I
Does
should
anyone
bring
else have their training certificate
I-
to present?
Well, not tonight, I don't. I already turned it in. So anyway,
May
have-
so,
may
so
have
just
one
to,
from
just for
2003.
something else to think about is that maybe this is kind of an odd time of the year to have us all doing it. It's supposed to be done within a certain number of days. I
It's
think
under
it's 60
$50?
after you're elected.
I hope so.
So maybe we want to revisit this in the springtime so that we can sort of set a date in the spring after April 1st that we all do it and get it done and make sure that that is a ongoing commitment by the
fair.
Finance Commission.
Okay.
That's fine.
Good.
Okay?
Absolutely.
Conflict of interest, senior work program report, Forbes Hill. You already talked about the Forbes Hill. Airport completion, and
That's
you're
gonna be
you're
next
gonna,
time.
next time. Anybody else have anything that you want to bring up?
I had one thing that I would like to ask for, and I don't
Yes.
know if Mr. Mizuko is the right one for this. So, in the town, and I know Ann and I had spoken about this, in the town meeting last year, we approved the new zoning, the mixed-use overlay district in the downtown. What I would love to see is updates on how things are progressing with getting the landlords to actually take action on the changes we made to actually do some of the improvements of the town and what we're doing to incentivize them to do so. So I would love to see, I know it's a long process, it's not gonna happen like that, but I would love to
Yeah,
see
we
how
can
we're
look and
making
see if any
progress
of the,
So
there.
you'd like status reports along the way?
There you go, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can.
Thanks,
It
Judy.
really depends on whether or not any of the properties change hands, or we can see if any applications have been filed
Okay.
for.
Just nice to see what the fruit of that approval is bring, and then we
Sure.
can see what it brings in terms of tax revenue, because that's the whole goal, right?
Absolutely.
Rejuvenate the center, bring more tax revenue.
Alright,
I
Judy,
do know
anything?
that there's a house on, I think, Day Street, corner of Day and Broadway, that's up for sale, it's multifamily. And there's been talk about a developer buying it and either maybe leveling it and putting more condos or apartments in there. Because now they can do it with the new change.
I think one of the commercial properties right up here has sold. So sometimes what happens is they change hands, and then a couple months nothing happens. And I know one developer had mentioned they were looking at something up along here, and whether we're going to the town lot, but I don't know where it's going. A lot of these things end up being conceptual until you get a permit application.
Okay.
But
Alright.
we'll see what's happened. Next month we'll get an update if we've had any changes in property or any permits pulled or anything.
That'd be cool.
That's the house right across from the old Samson's garage there.
Okay.
Oh.
That would be a good place to start.
And it has a parking lot belongs to that house for 28 cars, so the land is larger than you think.
Yeah.
And they're talking about apartments or condos there.
Cool.
Okay.
Judy, anything that you want to
No.
either put on an upcoming agenda, or
I'm all set.
you're all set, Alan?
I'm all set, thank you.
You know, could we, this is just informational, and maybe Tom can construct it for, and I know I can probably get it myself. But can we just get, as we entered into FY20, what was the actual split from revenue after the override was initiated? I know we usually work the 55-45, but I just was wondering what the actual split was with the override monies being incorporated.
We can get it. I think it's 58-42.
Okay.
I could be
Just
wrong.
curious.
I mean, one of the things that's gonna have to come up when we begin budget
Budget
for next
balancing,
year, which is
yeah.
not that far away,
Mm.
believe it or not, is, what that split should be, and, how the split is calculated, with the
But we
override
also have
money
to
or
take into
not.
consideration the facilities
The facilities.
Right.
department
Right.
and what that impact is
Right.
and how that's gonna be.
Could be,
Right.
could be separated out, yeah.
Yeah.
Do
So,
it many ways, yes.
actually, I know that Maya, in her discussions with me about the budget balancing subcommittee, that's one thing that she wanted to take a look at. So
Yeah,
we'll
it's
work
a
on
to-
it
yeah,
someplace.
It's
Okay.
a definite to
And
do,
I'll
for
just-
sure.
I would love to see it, what I would love to see it now with the override, but I'd love to see what we actually spend year over year, because I know we arbitrarily picked this 55-45 split, but it seems like one entity or the other is borrowing money from, or someone's giving the money to balance their budget in some way during the budget process.
Every year,
So it's
that
more than
it-
50.
It would be great to see, it could be more on the town side, I don't
very
know, it would just
rarely
be great to
45,
see what
55.
that is.
Yeah.
But it's not 45-55, and it wasn't even before the override. So I'd love to see what it was for the last 10 years, and then add the override money in, and maybe that's more a realistic split.
All right.
Just wanted to, Mark did a very good presentation on the selectmen's meeting on reuse, recycle, and reduce.
Yep, the
Yeah, that,
resolution for producer
yeah.
packaging responsibility is going to be on their board next week, on their agenda next week.
Yeah.
We may be the first town in the eastern part of the state to endorse that.
Is he gonna send some of that material out, you know, whether it goes in an electric bill or not, just so people have an idea of what some of the options are?
We do. We constantly are pushing out as much as we can get, and
Yeah.
we try to get as much response as we can.
Just incredulous to me that, you know, in some cases it costs more to recycle than it is just to throw away. It's
Yep.
counterintuitive, or counterproductive, but hey, be that as it may.
But I was really impressed with the cost scenarios that he did with just the 5-10% reduction in recyclables and trash. That, you know,
Absolutely.
you get up to 15%, you're talking $150,000 or more, actually $162,000, if we are able to reduce our tonnage for both recycling and nudging people in the right direction. I had to say that because my daughter would be proud of me if I did. So I have accomplished that, and I can check it off my list.
Okay. Anything else? Anybody?
Make a motion
Make a
to
motion?
adjourn?
You are making a motion?
Second.
Okay. Did you get that?
I just needed an exact time.
Okay.
8:35.